Chapter 10:11. Even the sun god's badge didn't exert its power at this time. Song Howren couldn't construct a three-dimensional structure of the mountain stream in his mind. He could only explore a radius of about 2 meters with him as the center. This made Song Howren scared, but at the same time, it made him feel the tension and excitement of his first adventure. Before he got the sun god's badge, he was just an ordinary person with a good family background. There were many unknown and inexplicable things in the world. The world was full of mysteries. The world was much bigger than he knew. The world was not boring. Oh, it seems that this trip is the right one, but, however, it would be fine if he was alone. It was a pity that Song Ying, Luoqiu and a young lady of the Zhang family were with him. He could ignore the young lady of the Zhang family, but Song Howren couldn't leave Song Ying, Luoqiu and Song Howren alone. It's a bit difficult. In the situation where he couldn't explore the terrain, lost his direction and couldn't communicate with the outside world, even Song Howren couldn't do anything. What he could do now was to carry out a very inefficient search. Maybe he could find a way out, maybe he could find Song Ying and the others, or maybe he could find the reason for the thick fog. Vaguely, Song Howren seemed to hear a strange sound coming from the thick fog, like some kind of cry. This sound made him have a feeling of awe from the bottom of his heart, and also made the sun god's badge he was wearing suddenly become hot. "You're interested too." Song Howren lowered his head and glanced at the badge in his clothes. Then, he looked in a direction. This way, Song Howren pondered for a while, and decided to go in the direction of the gaze. Under the premise that it was impossible to find Song Ying and the others, he had to explore other ways. Perhaps, in the process of moving forward, he would also encounter people, if they were also attracted by the sound. Song Howren quickly took out a butterfly knife from his suit pocket, but he didn't open it. He just hid it in his sleeve. After a long time, Song Howren didn't meet Song Ying and the others on the road, but he unexpectedly met a strange guy. The reason why this person was said to be strange was because he did not show his true face. Instead, he wore an ancient bronze mask and wore a black tang suit. There were some flame-like embroidery on the clothes. This bronze-masked man gave Song Howren a very dangerous feeling. At this time, he stood in the thick fog with his hands behind his back. He didn't look at Song Howren, just raised his head and seemed to be looking at something. "Hey brother, there's something I want to ask you." Song Howren adjusted his pace and said in a relaxed tone as he walked towards the bronze-masked man. "I'm lost, and I got separated from my companions. Excuse me, have you seen anyone else besides me?" The mysterious man didn't respond. He didn't even move. Song Howren came closer at this time. "Brother, it's fun to help others. How about doing me a favor?" In fact, he had already walked to the side of the mysterious man and reached out to put his hand on the mysterious man's shoulder, but at the moment when Song Howren's palm was about to touch the mysterious man's shoulder, he suddenly stopped and quickly stepped back 2 steps. Warning. The sun god's badge suddenly issued a warning at this time. This warning had helped Song Howren avoid danger countless times. "Oh!" the bronze-masked man finally responded. He slowly turned around, as if looking at Song Howren. His voice was low, like a processed interview recording. "You seem to be a little special. I think no matter how special I am, I can't be compared with you, right?" Song Howren smiled and began to tidy up his sleeves, slowly. "Alone?" the mysterious masked man said indifferently at this time. "Before I went out, I gave myself a cheat. Heaven tremors up and down, unexpected thunder. It seems that I still need to eliminate some accident." Song Howren chuckled. "It seems that I'm really not popular." The mysterious man in the bronze mask in front of him now walked towards Song Howren with his hands clasped behind his back. Song Howren narrowed his eyes. But the man in the bronze mask came to Song Howren in an instant. It was as if he had shrunk the size of the ground. In a split second, the mysterious man in the bronze mask attacked Song Howren's chin from bottom to top like lightning. All the nerves in Song Howren's body were operating at an extraordinary speed at this moment. Under that swift blow, he suddenly raised his head and dodged the mysterious man's attack. He quickly took a step back, and at the same time, the butterfly knife hidden in his sleeve instantly slipped into his palm. The butterfly knife quickly twirled. Song Howren became more frivolous. That was really dangerous. Humph! The mysterious man snorted, and used the extremely fast footwork again. This time, it seemed to be much faster than the last time. Song Howren's pupils constricted in an instant. He only felt a strong wind coming towards his head at this moment. That was a side kick from the mysterious man. So fast. In an instant, Song Howren only had time to bend his arm and block the side of his head, but this side kick was like a truck crashing into him. His body instantly flew out like a kite with a broken string. However, this was not the end. After the side kick, the mysterious man spun his body effortlessly and kicked Song Howren, who was already flying backward, a second heavy blow. Double kick. In an instant, Song Howren felt that his arm was completely numb at this moment. His body severely hit something hard, probably the trunk of an old tree. His spine was probably broken because of the impact. Song Howren slid down the trunk, and a mouthful of warm blood gushed out from his mouth. He struggled to raise his head, only to see that the mysterious man had already walked in front of him, slightly sideways, and heavily kicked Song Howren's chest. Song Howren once again spat out a mouthful of blood, and directly fell to the ground, motionless. "Although I don't know how you broke in," the mysterious man said indifferently, "I don't want to make any mistakes. Reincarnate well. In your next life, I'll let you see a new world." After saying this, the mysterious man turned around and left. But just as he took 2 steps, he heard a slight cough. Under the bronze mask, his expression was a bit surprised, and at the same time, he slowly turned around. He saw that the person who was supposed to be dead now supported himself with both hands on the ground, and then stood up easily. Song Howren spat out a mouthful of bloody saliva, and then touched his mouth. "Hey, the game just started. Why are you in such a hurry to leave? What the hell are you?" The mysterious man frowned. He was sure that this person wasn't a monster. He was sure that this person didn't have any fluctuation of magic power. But this person came back from the dead. His injury was also healed. The butterfly knife spun in Song Howren's hand again, and he said with a smile, "Can you tell me how big the world is?" "It's a bit interesting," the mysterious man said indifferently at this time. But he turned over his palm, and a yellow talisman appeared instantly. The mysterious man shot out this talisman, and with a sound of breaking air and thunder, it instantly exploded in front of Song Howren. Rumble! The sound was absorbed by the surrounding thick fog, but it was still deafening. The place in front of the mysterious man was now filled with thick smoke. He waved his hand, and a strong wind swept away the smoke and dust in an instant. He saw that Song Howren was lying in a pit at this time. His legs had been blown up, and half of his body was badly mutilated, and there was even a burnt smell coming out. The mysterious man walked to the front of Song Howren, looking at Song Howren's face which had been blown up beyond recognition, and didn't say a word. "Is he dead?" So he turned around and left again. "This is the so-called Taoist magic art? Talisman or something?" The voice came from behind again. At this moment, the mysterious man turned around abruptly, only to see that Song Howren was still lying in the pit. When his whole body was healed, his face that had been blown up beyond recognition was restored to its former handsome appearance. Only his clothes that had been blown up proved that he had indeed been attacked by the mysterious man. "You're immortal?" The mysterious man pondered for a moment, then stared at Song Howren and asked in a deep voice. "Immortal?" Song Howren chuckled. "How is that possible? I just have a few more lives than others. What's the saying in Hua Nation? By the way, it's impolite not to reciprocate. Why don't you try my attack?" With that, Song Howren directly tore open his tattered shirt, revealing a strong and thin body of muscles. At the same time, one of his arms suddenly burst into a golden-red luster, and at this time, his entire arm was burning. No, it was more like a combination of lava. He rushed toward the mysterious man with all his strength, and at this time, he simply and directly punched out his burning fist. Bang! The fist smashed down fiercely, and in an instant, sand and dust billowed, accompanied by a grenade-like explosion. Similarly, sand and dust billowed, but Song Howren didn't feel like he was hit. Instead, he looked at his burning arm, and at the same time squeezed his palm. This power is real, then. He abruptly dodged to the side of his body, only to hear the sound of a thunderclap. The crater created by his burning fist instantly exploded and expanded once again. Obviously, the power of this mysterious man's attack was much higher than Song Howren's. This mysterious man might not even be serious. However, it's not like I can't fight back. At this time, the mysterious man began to circle Song Howren and launched a few attacks. His breathing and rhythm didn't change at all, and he just silently observed, as if he was studying the reason why this mysterious man was resurrected twice. Once again, the mysterious man pierced Song Howren's chest with his palm, a sure-kill attack. However, Song Howren climbed up from the ground again, without any injuries. Well, let's see how many times I can kill you, and how many lives you have. He seemed to be serious, this guy. But, at this moment, Song Howren's heart seemed to have sensed the instinct of the owner of this body to seek excitement, and started to beat crazily. The heartbeat was like an engine, incessantly drumming in Song Howren's ears. Song Ying picked up a few pieces of withered vines from God knows where. She broke these vines in front of Zhang Qingrui, and stripped off the skin of the vines, and then gave one to her. Keep it in your mouth. Song Ying also held one in her mouth. Drink some water, it's clean and edible. Although Zhang Qingrui couldn't accept it, she didn't drink water for a long time since she was trapped in this cave, so her throat felt uncomfortable. She tried to imitate Song Ying and put the skinned, smooth, and slightly thick thing into her mouth. There was an indescribable taste, a slight astringent taste. But this thing was a bit hard, so it was impossible to chew it. It seemed she could only suck it. The liquid it sucked out was not much, but at least it could relieve some physiological need. Just like that, the two of them shared their food. Zhang Qingrui suddenly asked, "Did you hear any noise?" Song Ying looked around with confusion. Is it a echo? After all, this is a sealed place. But there is a slight vibration, as if there is a pile driver outside. Okay. Zhang Qingrui nodded. Indeed, if someone came here, they should have heard the sound of shouting. However, it was so quiet here that they could almost hear the breathing and sucking sound. Song Ying quickly ate up the vines in her hand, and then leaned against the rock wall, looking at the falling hole. Is it still painful? Much better. Zhang Qingrui said softly. Song Ying asked again, Are you scared? It's okay. At least I'm not alone. Zhang Qingrui forced a smile. Also, I have a feeling that I've had a similar experience before, where I somehow ended up in a place where I couldn't see the sun. Really? Song Ying nodded lazily. I had a similar experience not long ago. Zhang Qingrui looked at Song Ying curiously. But at this moment, Song Ying suddenly hummed a soft tune. Perhaps it was because they were in this sealed place, but the sound was not loud, but it was abnormally clear. This tune. Zhang Qingrui was fascinated by it. Song Ying stopped and smiled. I heard it by accident when I was trapped last time. Well, someone with a girlfriend was humming it. That's all I remember. I don't remember anything else. This is farewell. Zhang Qingrui smiled. Let me hum it for you. Chapter 10-12. His mood seemed to have become much more relaxed. The song Zhang Qingrui was humming gave her a warm feeling. It was as if a warm current was born in her lower abdomen, and then began to spread to her four limbs. In this cold and damp cave, Song Ying felt her cheeks heat up, and even her consciousness became a little blurry. At this time, her body also became lazy, and the feeling of weakness in her limbs made Song Ying suddenly feel uneasy. She subconsciously touched her forehead and found that it was a little hot. A fever? Was it because he caught a cold? Zhang Qingrui's voice seemed to have stopped. Song Ying shone the flashlight on her phone at Zhang Qingrui and found that she was leaning against the rock wall. Her cheeks were slightly red and she was panting. Her eyes were a little blurred. It seems strange. Zhang Qingrui's voice was intermittent. Song Ying touched Zhang Qingrui's forehead and found that Zhang Qingrui's body was hot like her. Was it because of the vines she just sucked? Was she poisoned? Song Ying moved to Zhang Qingrui with difficulty, shaking her head. How are you? Are you awake? Even so, Song Ying's consciousness was gradually becoming more and more blurry. Her vision was distorted, and she couldn't see Zhang Qingrui's face clearly. So hot, so hot, so hot. As her consciousness gradually blurred, Song Ying only felt a hand groping her body. She raised her head slightly, and her gaze became even more confused. She only saw a beautiful face approaching her. She exhaled. A primitive impulse began to drown her reason. She suddenly took the initiative or let her body take the lead. Their slightly parted lips stacked together as they explored each other. The entanglement between the wet tips of their tongues aroused the primitive desires buried deep in each other's hearts. Saliva overflowed from their lips, making the battlefield of lips more muddy. As for the different but equally intoxicated moans between both parties, it was probably the best catalyst for lust, right? So hot, the surrounding temperature seemed to have become somewhat scorching, and the source was obviously because of Song Howren's current state. His arm was burning. At this moment, strands of flames were flowing and rising, and the terrifying heat had already evaporated a lot of the surrounding water vapor. The ground was full of potholes left by the fierce battle, like a battlefield bombarded by stray bullets. Song Howren was gasping for breath at this time, as if he had done several hours of aerobic exercise. His hair was already wet with sweat, but it was instantly evaporated by the heat emitted by his burning arm. His hair was already messy and stuck together. Even though his body returned to its original state after the resurrection, his physical strength didn't recover. Maybe he had resurrected too many times. Suddenly, Song Howren forgot the number of times he had resurrected, but it seemed that he had resurrected more than 100 times. Even for him, it was undoubtedly a great challenge to his spirit. Not far away, the mysterious man was not at ease either. He was also consuming energy. Every time he attacked, he would consume energy. Although it was not a large amount, it accumulated. After hundreds of attacks, he had spent a considerable amount of energy. His breath was a little chaotic. The mysterious man felt his current state with some disbelief, and found that not only was the rhythm of his breathing disrupted, but there was also some vague irritation in his heart. This should not exist for him, because he could basically grasp all the information. Except for the mysterious young man he met under the Song family's ancestral house, which was completely out of his control, everything was so orderly. Is it because he can't kill him, so it's the irritation? The mysterious man frowned. On one hand, it was because he didn't know where the limit of this undying guy was, and on the other hand, maybe it was because his state of mind had not reached a perfect state. Enough. At this time, the mysterious man with the bronze mask suddenly lowered his hand and looked at Song Howren quietly, as if he was no longer attacking. Enough. Song Howren stared at the mysterious man like a lone wolf at this time. It seems that I'm the one who is completely at a disadvantage, and you give up just like that? I don't know how many times you can resurrect. The mysterious man shook his head and said indifferently, based on the current situation, I don't know your background, so I should be the one who is at a disadvantage. Song Howren showed a cold smile. The mysterious man with the bronze mask at this time said indifferently, Besides, I don't want to continue wasting time on you. Next, I have some important things to deal with. This strange fog. Is it you who made it? Song Howren's arm was still burning. Although the mysterious man had lowered his hands and no longer attacked actively, he did not let his guard down. After all, he had died hundreds of times. At this time, the man with the bronze mask said indifferently, I admit that you are qualified to live. After all, this kind of resurrection ability seems to be quite excellent. In terms of species, it can be said to be a qualified individual. Cherish it, this is a gift from God to you. The mysterious man's figure slowly blended into the thick fog. What is your purpose? Song Howren asked in a deep voice to the thick fog. However, he did not get any response for a long time, but when he gave up, the mysterious man's low voice came from all around. Just to create a better environment. A world suitable for transcendence. After this voice, the surroundings returned to a state of silence. Song Howren sighed, let the burning on his arm gradually calm down, and then sat down on the ground. His physical strength had actually reached the limit, now he did not want to move at all. But at this moment, something fell in front of Song Howren and fell on the soil in front of him. Song Howren picked it up in surprise and found that it was actually a thread-like ancient book. Great freedom technique. There was no doubt that Song Howren was a very knowledgeable person, especially the need for continuous exploration in the past let him absorb a lot of knowledge. He read the ancient words in this ancient book. This seemed to be something left by the mysterious man, or something given by him. A world more suitable for transcendence? Song Howren casually opened this ancient book, and found that the content was obscure and difficult to understand. Song Howren frowned and thought, and found that, vaguely, he somewhat yearned for the thing that the mysterious man said, but Song Howren suddenly lay on the ground. I'm so hungry. In the ancient legend, the place where the dragon god's child, Wang, lived was a deep pool, and there was a waterfall flowing down from the pool. In this chaotic space, Long Shirua somewhat admired this guy. After all, this guy in front of her didn't spend much effort to find this place. The strong negative ion water vapor dissipated from the impact of the waterfall pouring down and the pool water. Luo Dance took a deep breath and stretched herself. But before her waist was completely stretched, Long Shirua suddenly patted her back and said in an unkind tone, How many more buttons do you want to break? What? Luo Dance blinked and unzipped the coat given by Luochio subconsciously, exposing the originally hidden thing again. Not this time? Long Shirua painfully covered her forehead. As long as she wasn't naked, there was no need to feel embarrassed, right? But Luochio didn't care about this, but looked at the pool in front of him. In fact, the sound of the waterfall pouring down in the pool was quite loud. It wasn't so spectacular, but it had some extraordinary momentum. What's the approximate position? Luochio turned back at this time, but saw Luo Dance was zipping up at this time, and couldn't help but be stunned. He and the little butterfly monster looked at each other. Luo Dance tilted her head curiously, but her action of unzipping her dress stopped. Luochio smiled, and didn't look at Luo Dance anymore, but looked at Long Shirua. Miss Long? Long Shirua pointed at the pool in front at this time. Right under the waterfall, there is a round boulder. There is a passage behind it. Luochio looked at where Long Shirua pointed, and after a while, he said, Miss Long, the boulder you said has been moved away. What about the engravings on the stone? How many are left? Long Shirua frowned at this time. There should be 3, and the rest are scattered. Long Shirua nodded. It's not the worst situation. If there are 3 left, it can be repaired. But I'm afraid Wang is not inside. The key is to bring it back, otherwise it's useless to repair the seal. Let's do the preparation first. Luochio nodded and then walked towards the pool. Long Shirua wanted to say something, but quickly swallowed it back. Because at this moment the waterfall in front of them split from the center, and the water continued to pour down from both sides. At the same time, the pool also split from the center. The water on both sides of the pool seemed to be separated by something, and a straight path directly appeared at this moment. The ground of the pool was still in a wet state, but it didn't look muddy. It seemed that not only the problem of the piers, but also the trouble in the process of walking had been taken into consideration. Wow! At the moment of walking into the pool, Luo Dance looked at the pool water that became a towering water wall on both sides. She looked at it with amazement. In the water, she could clearly see the swimming fish. As if looking at the ornaments inside through the window, Luo Dance couldn't help but put her face close to the water wall and curiously took a deep breath. Then she held her breath and put her head into the water wall. Her swollen cheeks looked a little distorted in the water, and the buoyancy of the water made her hair loose. She began to look at the world in the water. Suddenly, a vigorous fish swam towards Luo Dance, and it seemed that it didn't mean to stop. After the fish opened its mouth, the dense and sharp teeth were constantly enlarged in Luo Dance's sight. She opened her mouth subconsciously. The huge pressure at the bottom of the pool instantly poured a large amount of turbid liquid into the mouth of this little butterfly monster. She suddenly pulled her head out of the water with some pain, and painfully coughed a few times. "Wipe it." Luocio took out a clean towel from his backpack and gave it to Luo Dance. At the same time, he waved his hand to send the fish that had just jumped out of the water and was now lying in the pool, flapping constantly, back into the water. This seemed to be a casual move. But Long Shiruo was somewhat absent-minded because of this. As the club boss, as the Soul Reaper, why did you, who covet all the beautiful things in the world, respect such a weak life so much? What on earth were you thinking? I'm sorry. The little butterfly monster kept apologizing at this time. I've caused trouble for you again. I'm sorry. It's okay. Luocio shook his head and said softly, if you're interested, you can go to the aquarium. It's more convenient. Luo Dance nodded and then showed a bright smile. It seemed that she didn't think much, and just said what was in her heart casually. Then if there's a chance next time, boss, let's go to the aquarium together. Me? Luocio was slightly stunned. Luo Dance blinked and said, yes, or you'll be lonely if you go alone, won't you? That's true. Luocio nodded and smiled, if there's a chance. Really? Luo Dance suddenly grabbed Luocio's hand, holding it in front of her chest, and seemed to be quite happy. By the way, let's call Sister Yu Yi and Sister Long together. Let's go together. I don't have such leisure time. Long Shiruo snorted with a disgusted expression, and walked straight ahead. Luo Dance looked at him with some embarrassment. At this time Luocio quietly withdrew his hand and said casually, wipe your hair first. Okay. She was always full of spirit like this. In front, Long Shiruo had stopped at this time. Standing still, she frowned, looking at a huge round stone that was completely exposed. There were circles of black chain-like engravings on this stone. Looking carefully, it could be seen that these engravings were composed of small curses. Now, only 3 of the engravings that should be intact were not broken. Do you see anything? Luocio came behind Long Shiruo, bending slightly and asking. But the distance was too close. Long Shiruo seemed to hear the sound of glass being scraped, and suddenly goosebumps appeared all over her body. She moved to the side and then said seriously, it's man-made. If Wang broke through by himself, those engravings wouldn't be broken so regularly. Luocio nodded, and at the same time looked at the place behind the round stone. It was a pitch-black cave. However, in front of this cave, which was the entrance that was originally blocked by the round rock, there were stone pillars. These pillars also sealed this cave at the same time, but at this time, several pillars in the middle had been broken. Luocio suddenly asked, has it always been here? What else can we do? Long Shiruo said with a helpless face, I'm just doing it for its own good. I don't want to do this. Luocio nodded. I'll have to trouble Miss Long to repair it. I'll go in and have a look. Chapter 1013. In fact, this round stone had a special name, Dragon Sealing Stone. The world was divided into yin and yang, and all things in the world were mutually reinforcing and counteracting each other. Life forms like dragons that had spiritual veins naturally had their natural enemies. Where did the dragon sealing stone come from? Even the ancient knowledge of the true dragon of the divine land could not find the source. This dragon sealing stone was dug out by Long Shiruo in the extreme north. It had the ability to suppress the life of the dragon sealing stone. Of course, with such a small piece, the suppression on the true dragon of the divine land was almost negligible. Although Long Shiruo could only use the secret treasure to create a body that could only exert a fraction of its power. Of course, such a body created with a secret treasure was like a puppet using a battery. The source of the battery was her own blood essence. And because it was created with the help of Chichikamaya's secret treasure, it could only contain a limited amount of Shinryu's power. It couldn't achieve the characteristics of Shinryu. As long as it stood on the land of Kelowna, it would be invincible and could be constantly replenished from the land of Kelowna. But of course, this replenishment was constant. Once the output exceeded the replenishment, it would be weakened for a short time. In her impression, Luo Dance hadn't seen Sister Long Shiruo's appearance for a long time. Maybe she was used to Sister Long Shiruo's appearance, so when she saw the tall and slender figure, Luo Dance was not used to it. I think the current Sister Long is cuter. Therefore, the little butterfly monster's head was knocked hard, using the simulated body that she had created. As for wide, it was because Sister Long Shiruo's hand couldn't reach it. If you have nothing to do, stay aside and read books. Even if you do nothing but sit and store the fat on your chest. Long Shiruo's eyes were very fierce. Just don't disturb me. Luo Dance opened her eyes wide and pursed her lips. She sat on the ground, holding her knees and trembling. Terrible, terrible. Seriously. Long Shiruo grabbed her hair and sighed. After that, she quickly calmed down and focused on controlling the body she created. She walked up to the dragon sealing stone and began to examine the engravings on it. There was a time limit to the creation of a body. If the release of power exceeded what the body could withstand, the time limit would be reduced. Once that happened, Long Shiruo would have to bleed again. This kind of bloodletting was the essence blood in the body, which was not comparable to the filthy blood left during menstruation. Long Shiruo shook her head abruptly, threw away the distracting thoughts, and began to concentrate on her work. However, her main body was also walking towards the interior of the cave. Although her main body had no power, she was still able to multitask and maintain efficiency at the same time. She suddenly felt a little worried about Luochio. She walked in, not because she was worried that this guy would be dangerous, but because she was worried that this guy would suddenly have some ideas. The kind of power that seemed to be unrestricted by the rules and the idea that the universal morality couldn't restrain. Such a combination was probably the most dangerous thing in this world. You stay outside and keep an eye on them. If there's anything, just shout. Long Shiruo left him these words. Huh! Some water dripping sounds could be heard in the process of moving forward. After entering the passage through the pillar at the entrance of the dragon sealing stone, Luochio could see many small puddles in the vertical cave of the pool. The water dripped from the stalactites above. It probably penetrated from the mountain and accumulated over time, forming many small puddles. It was humid and quiet, making people feel uneasy. Only the sound of water dripping from the stalactites could be heard repeatedly, and there was no light source here. Even though this was a place used to close off the lookout, it was surprisingly simple and crude. This was just the interior of an ordinary cave. There was nothing here. Luochio soon came to the end of the cave. About 200 years, I guess. Suddenly, Long Shiruo's childish voice came from behind. Luochio turned around and saw Long Shiruo walking toward him. She took out a wrinkled cigarette box from her trouser pocket. After shaking it twice, she put a cigarette into her mouth. Because it was particularly quiet, the sound of the grindstone of the lighter rubbing was particularly clear. Although he had long known that this person had a habit of smoking, seeing her act like a little girl now, it was more or less a little strange. Long Shirua walked to the end of the rock wall and exhaled a mouthful of smoke. Because of its congenital deficiency, it took about 100 years to transform into a dragon. But before it could properly experience this world, I directly locked it in this place for 200 years. Long Shirua stretched out her hand and wiped the rock wall in the depth. After wiping away the mud and dust on the rock wall, it was found that the surface of the rock wall was unusually smooth. Or, it was like a polished crystal, but the color was quite dim. Long Shirua knocked on it with her hand, then shook her head and said, "At first, I just felt that it was too small, so I opened up a passable subspace in this stone. But now that I think about it, it was probably out of a kind of guilty psychology. Compensation or something. I'm just deceiving myself." Luochio also walked to the front of the rock wall and looked at it. Long Shirua sighed at this time. "At first it was fine. If I didn't leave. But in the end, I still left, and then only came back to see it once in a while." "Left?" Long Shirua raised her head, looked at Luochio with a complicated gaze, and said indifferently, 100 years ago, I found another spiritual vein with the qualifications to transform into a dragon, then I settled down in that place. But unfortunately, it didn't succeed in the end. It died prematurely." Luochio was silent for a moment, then said seriously, "That's the most beautiful thing I've seen so far." Long Shirua lowered her head. "Give it back to me." Luochio looked down at her. Vaguely, there seemed to be such a soft voice, but it was only for a moment, like an illusion. That seemingly helpless, weak, and even pleading words. Was this Shinryu's true feelings? "Can we go in and see?" Luochio asked softly at this time. Long Shirua took a deep breath and then exhaled. "It's no use, the space inside has been destroyed since I left. After that, it probably can only stay in the outside cave." Long Shirua looked a bit bitter. "Even I can only stay in such a place for 100 or 200 years. If I don't sleep, I'm afraid I can't stand it. Every time I come to see it, it always becomes more irritable." She clenched her fists a little hard. Luochio could clearly feel some emotions from Long Shirua's heart. After that, he put his palm on the rock wall, but just lightly pressed it and then took it back. "Go out, there's nothing to see here." Long Shirua threw the cigarette butt on the ground, stepped on it, and walked directly out of the cave. Luochio shook his head, picking up the cigarette butt, but when he bent down, he saw something. Well, it was buried in the mud, and only a small corner was exposed. "Did anything happen?" Long Shirua asked Luodance after coming out. After all, she was multitasking, and her body was concentrating on repairing the engraving on the dragon's sealing stone, so she couldn't pay too much attention to the outside world. "Nothing." Luodance shook her head, and then curiously approached Long Shirua, staring at Long Shirua's face with her big eyes. "What? Sister Long, what's wrong with you?" Luodance stretched out her hand and touched Long Shirua's face, curiously saying, "Why are your eyes red? It hurts. So troublesome." At this time, Long Shirua put her palm directly on Luodance's chest, and then grasped it hard. Maybe this was the real dragon claw. Luodance had to hold her body innocently. When Luochio came out from the back, he happened to see Luodance's weak appearance. "What happened?" "Nothing." "Yes." "Humph." After hearing Shinryu's snort, Kelowna went directly to the body she created and paid attention to it. But Luodance was really a good girl. Seeing the boss was puzzled, she plucked up her courage and came to the boss, whispering, "Is Sister Long angry with me?" "What do you mean?" Luochio curiously asked. Luodance said in a lower voice, "Otherwise, why did she grab my chest so hard? Ha, why did you tell me this?" But Long Shirua suddenly raised her head at this time. The body she created directly went along with the waterfall from the sky at this moment. After saying goodbye to Song Howren, the mysterious man with the bronze mask quickly came to a high ground. The sound of water could be heard here. because not far ahead was the cliff, which was the beginning of the waterfall. But there was not only the mysterious man here. At this moment there was a long figure above the narrow river. As long as one approached it, he would find that the figure floating above the river was in a translucent state. But there was no doubt that this was the posture of the dragon god that the Chinese people were familiar with and worship. Wang. The mysterious man came to the riverside. At this moment, the translucent dragon shadow with a length of more than 20 meters moved. It twisted its head and looked at the mysterious man with the bronze mask. At this time, the mysterious man stood with his hands clasped behind his back, looking up at the magical creature between heaven and earth, and said indifferently, "I paid a great price to open the seal of the dragon sealing stone, but not for you to create a vision here. If you do this, I will be in trouble." "She's coming." A voice directly appeared in the mysterious man's mind. Wang could directly communicate with people through telepathy without any language. She? The mysterious man was stunned, then after a moment of thought, he stretched out his hand and fingers and began to calculate. After a while, he said seriously, "That's Shinryu of Kelowna? She's coming." Wang's voice sounded again in the mysterious man's mind. "I can feel that she has stepped into this mountain area." The mysterious man sighed at this time. "You want to see her?" The huge dragon shadow in front of the mysterious man suddenly circled, turned into a stream of light, and landed in front of the mysterious man. What walked out of the stream of light was a child about 10 years old. He had black hair, but it was extremely long, hanging to the ground. At the same time, he had delicate facial features, completely like a porcelain doll. He only wore a simple one-piece white robe. Wang shook his head. "Once I see her, she will only ask me to go back and continue to trap me with the dragon sealing stone. Since I'm already out, then I will." Wang did not finish his words, he just looked at the end of the river thoughtfully. "No matter what, I hope you will keep your promise and let me borrow your power," the mysterious man said indifferently. "You evolved from a section of the soaring dragon meridian. Only through you can I communicate with the 12 ancestral dragon meridians of Kelowna." "She's coming," Wang said coldly. The mysterious man suddenly looked up and saw a golden light shoot up from the end of the river, landing in front of the mysterious man and Wang at an extremely fast speed. The created body shared a vision with Long Shirua's original body and also emitted waves of Shinryu's power. Although there were many differences between this body and the real Kelowna Shinryu, in the eyes of others, these differences could not be felt at all. Long Shirua sized him up with a cold expression. "You were the one who removed the seal of the dragon sealing stone? Your method is not bad." The mysterious man took a deep breath. In the past, he had heard all kinds of legends about the Shinryu of Kelowna. She was an existence that stood at the peak of all demons and the Tao world. Even so, when she truly appeared in front of him, that kind of enormous pressure was far beyond the mysterious man's expectations. "It's really an honor to be praised by Lord Long." The mysterious man spread his palms slightly and said calmly, "I will continue to work hard." Before he could finish his sentence, Long Shirua had already raised her hand and waved it. A golden light shot out from her palm. The mysterious man hurriedly put his hands together and blocked Long Shirua's attack in a hurry. However, he paid a huge price for this. The clothes on his hands had been destroyed by the explosion, and at the same time, his hands were badly mutilated. His hands hung limply and trembled. "She's indeed the strongest person in Kelowna." The mysterious man's voice was bitter. "I've finally seen it. I don't care what your purpose is, what's the reason behind it, and why you want to destroy the seal of the dragon sealing stone." Long Shirua said coldly, "But I can tell you clearly that I won't let go of anyone who wants to touch the power of the dragon vein, even if you're the successor of the cloth Tao. It's not easy to destroy the seal of the dragon sealing stone. With such a huge calculation, it's impossible to not trigger the defensive mechanism I set on the seal without any mistakes. Other than the cloth Tao, It's really hard to find anyone else. Long Shirua snorted coldly. Am I right? Tion Xin. 71 generations. The mysterious man fell silent. At the same time, the bronze mask on his face shattered. Long Shirua's attack had not only severely injured his hands, but also shattered his bronze mask. Chapter 10:14. He looked like a dried corpse that had been frozen in a snowy mountain for 1,000 years, that withered face. Long Shirua frowned, looking at the appearance of the 71st generation. I've never seen such a heavy aura of death on your body before. What exactly did you do to make yourself stay? Many thanks to Lord Long for your concern. 71st generation laughed coldly, looking as calm as ever, but his hands were hanging down, and blood was constantly flowing out from them. It was truly impossible to connect him to being confident. Who cares about your life or death? Long Shirua laughed coldly as well. The plain-clothed Tao exhausts the mysteries of heaven, which is a great taboo to begin with. Since the heavens aren't willing to let you stay, then there's nothing to say. Lord Long, how do you view the current world? Skyheart's 71st generation wasn't angry, and instead asked solemnly. Current world. Long Shirua frowned. That's right. Current world. Where was the path for cultivators back then? And where was the path for the monsters back then? You are a supreme existence that stands between the two realms. Can you answer my question? Long Shirua couldn't help but fall silent. After a while, he said, Is there something you're dissatisfied with? Thinking back to 1,000 years ago, Taoism flourished, and the monsters prospered, although this world was still the world of humans. Both Taoism and monsters had plenty of space for survival. Taoism and monsters even stood aloof, ignoring the flourishing imperial court. This world was filled with spiritual energy, and there were countless paradises in Kelowna. The people worshipped ghosts and gods, and revered supernatural powers. Even the emperors of the human world had to be polite. But now, what about us? Lord Long, don't you know best? Long Shirua sighed, then laughed coldly. So you're a fool who cherishes the past, unwilling to wake up. Humph, so what if the monsters were glorious in the past? That's already a thing of the past. And now, the human Tao is flourishing in this world, humans are the rulers. Furthermore, you have never experienced the glorious period of the Tao demons. Can your imagination make you so excited? Idiot. Do you know how many lives were lost when the Tao world and the demon world were glorious? The number of Dian is 50, and 49 of them are used, but there is still one that escapes. The 71st generation Skyheart's expression was rather excited. There is always a chance. The peak of prosperity leads to decline, and the extreme of misfortune leads to prosperity. After the age of Dharma, it should be a new era. Don't tell me that even you don't understand this logic? As long as the spiritual energy of all the dragon veins in Kelowna is restored, the spiritual energy of all living beings is restored, and the world is once again suitable for Tao demons to live in, we can still beat back the human Tao. So what? Long Shirua shook her head. With the current weapons of the humans, even if you were given an environment suitable for cultivation and survival, how many of you would be able to fight against the weapons of the humans? The current humans are not as ignorant as they were in the past. The knowledge they seek has even rushed out of this planet. As for you, how many of you would be able to break through the sky and reach the galaxy? As long as the spiritual energy is restored, we will have the possibility of becoming immortals. As long as we open the immortal path to the heavens, we will be able to roam the firmament and grasp the galaxy. Humans are not worth mentioning. Human, what's so annoying? Long Shirua said coldly. You're talking as if you're not a human. I think you have eaten too much of a lettuce and become immortals all day long. Why don't you starve to death and ascend to heaven first? If I don't slap you twice, you won't wake up. Then, Long Shirua flashed to the front of the 71st generation Skyheart and raised her hand instantly. Even though it was only a fraction of her strength, it was probably not something the 71st generation Skyheart could bear. That incomparably powerful Shinryu's spiritual energy exploded, instantly making the 71st generation Skyheart feel like he was looking up at a tall mountain. This is Kelowna's strongest. The 71st generation Skyheart's body trembled. That enormous spiritual pressure actually made it hard for him to move his body. In that instant, the 71st generation Skyheart bit the tip of his tongue, the terrifying pain stimulating his sluggish nerves. Even though his hands were hanging down powerlessly, he still had the means to go all out. But at the same time, the 71st generation Skyheart suddenly couldn't see the long Shirua in front of him, because at this moment, he actually came to a rather unfamiliar place. There was no river around, only some scattered trees and rocks. The 71st generation Skyheart who came back to his senses was startled. He lowered his head and muttered to himself, "Hope." Her palm brushed past, but Long Shirua didn't feel any impact at all. Very clearly, this palm had hit nothing. The 71st generation Skyheart couldn't just disappear in front of her. He shouldn't even have this kind of ability. Hope. Long Shirua directly looked at Hope at this moment. But this young dragon Vane was currently looking at Long Shirua, shaking his head and slowly retreating, as if he was somewhat frightened and also somewhat afraid. "Hope, it's me." Long Shirua took a step forward. "Don't come over." Hope threw down this sentence, instantly turning around and disappearing in front of Long Shirua. Hope, this child's ability was folding space. With the ability to create a body, there was really no way to catch up. A feeling of frustration exploded in her heart. Long Shirua suddenly waved her hand at this moment. The river in front of her, within hundreds of meters, exploded. Countless splashes were pushed into the sky and then fell back down, like a heavy downpour. She raised her head, allowing the splashes to fall onto her body. She raised her head, looking at the top of the waterfall. But Luochio knew that Long Shirua was sharing her vision with the body she created and even feelings. The rain below the pool came later than that above the waterfall. Luo Dance stretched out her palm. The water droplets fell into her palm and quickly melted away. Then the rain began to get heavier. She looked at Luochio uneasily. Luochio just said, "Let your sister Long be alone." What happened above the waterfall didn't escape from Luochio's vision. Whether it was the conversation between Long Shirua and Skyheart 71, or Hope taking Skyheart 71 away, Luochio knew clearly. But he didn't intend to intervene for the time being. On the other hand, Luochio was quite interested in the few words revealed by Skyheart 71. Reviving the aura and creating a world suitable for transcendence was tantamount to challenging the established world's will of human prosperity. What a brave, reckless, and extremely stubborn heart the fog seems to have dispersed. Luo Dance raised her head and looked around. He saw that the thick mist was gradually thinning out. It was as if the source of all these abnormalities was already far away. The body created by Long Shirua fell from above, and then shrank, finally turning into a round bead and returning to her hand. "Don't you want to continue to repair the seal?" Luochio suddenly asked. Long Shirua said indifferently, "Don't you think it's ironic? I, as the Shinryu of Kelowna, actually used the dragon sealing stone to seal the leyline dragon." Luochio didn't say anything, but took out a new towel from his backpack. However, Long Shirua ignored the rain and walked to Luo Dance, saying indifferently, "Take me back, Wang has already left, there's no need to stay here." Luochio looked at Luochio in a panic, only to see him shaking his head and nodding. The little butterfly monster hurriedly said goodbye to Luochio, and quickly opened her colorful butterfly wings, flying away with Long Shirua in the air. After that, Luochio walked to the dragon sealing stone, looking at the engravings on it. Originally, there were only 3 intact engravings, but now there were 4. Long Shirua only repaired one of them. He touched these engravings with his hand, and found that the engravings formed by the spell were neat and tidy. So delicate. Luocio smiled, and then restored everything in the pool to its original state. When the mist completely dispersed, the pool had already returned to its original appearance. The roaring sound of the waterfall covered everything, and the orange-red sunlight made this place a little tiresome. It's almost time to go back, Luocio murmured, and then moved his eyes. Their positions are, well, here. When the dizziness gradually subsided, and the heat that filled her limbs gradually disappeared, a feeling of emptiness followed. Her body began to cool down, which made Song Ying suddenly shiver. She got up with a headache and rubbed her forehead with both hands. But at the same time, she felt that something was wrong. First, it was the problem of clothes. Although she wasn't fully armed for this outing, she definitely wouldn't wear too little. But now, she only had her underwear hanging on her body. Yes, it was hanging on her body, because the buttons on the back of her underwear were even loosened. Some blurred memories started to become clear. Song Ying glanced at Zhang Qingrui, who was in a strange situation with her. Song Ying was a bit flustered, because Zhang Qingrui had obviously woken up. This girl, who was like a lotus in summer, had red eyes at this moment. Although she had put on her clothes, it was hard to describe it as tidy. There were some red marks on Zhang Qingrui's white neck. Song Ying could figure out how they were caused by Zhang Qingrui even if she was on her knees. She didn't know whether she had them or not. Zhang Qingrui didn't look at Song Ying, but just sat there hugging her knees. A huge sense of guilt made Song Ying put on her clothes carelessly. I didn't expect this to happen. Well, maybe it's because of these vines. Well, but it's nothing. You see, I'm also a woman, and I don't have a man. Speaking of which, we're not at a disadvantage, right? Well, actually, this kind of thing is very common abroad, especially in high school and university. It's not only lesbian if you have a good relationship. I mean, it's a way to promote friendship. Well, Song Ying finally gave up trying to explain this matter, and finally lowered her head. Sorry, let's forget this matter. You have to believe me, I actually like men more. Well, Song Ying sighed. She felt as if she had completely turned into the role of a thug, and then forced herself on a lady of the boudoir. The deathly silent crypt returned to its original state. Song Ying didn't have any other means to ease the atmosphere, so she had to keep silent. But at this moment, the ear-piercing ringtone of her cell phone rang. There seems to be a signal. Song Ying hurriedly found her cell phone from the ground, then turned back. It's Luocio. Zhang Qingrui didn't react until now. Hello. Song Ying answered. Luocio, is that you? Except for myself, no one would use my cell phone to call you, right? Well, don't talk. Song Ying gritted her teeth. Where are you now? Is Song Hauran with you? Listen, Zhang Qingrui and I fell into a cave and are trapped. We can't get out now. I'll send you a location, see if you can find it. Oh, I should be above you. You just need to climb out a little bit. Climb? Do you know how deep it is? Wait a minute. Hearing this, Song Ying was stunned, then glanced at Zhang Qingrui doubtfully, but she saw Zhang Qingrui looking ahead in surprise. She said, It seems I can really climb out. Well, Song Ying stood up subconsciously, but at this time, she suddenly hit the rock above, heavily knocking the back of her head. She cried out in pain. When did the ceiling of the cave become so low? More than that, the topography of this place was completely different from when she fell. The two of them glanced at each other. Then, they bent their waists and crawled forward. After only a few meters, the space became spacious in an instant. When Song Ying and Zhang Qingrui stood up, they found that the hole was only 2 or 3 meters deep. It was just at the bottom of the hole, and a part of it was hidden. It seemed that someone had dug this hole horizontally for a few meters after digging it. At this time, the sky outside was completely dark, and there was only a touch of dark red in the distance. In such a place, it was naturally dark. Can you come up? Luocio stretched out his hand. Song Ying and Zhang Qingrui nodded at the same time. The two of them grabbed Luo Chio's outstretched hand one after the other and finally climbed out of the pit with some effort. Finally, we're saved. Song Ying sighed with emotion, but when she met Luochio's strange eyes, she suddenly shouted in her heart, "Oh no!" The joy of escaping from danger and the joy of reuniting with their companions overlapped, but at this moment it was definitely not double the happiness, because they climbed up in a hurry. Their clothes were still untidy. "No, it's not what you think." Song Ying hurriedly waved her hands, trying to explain. As for Zhang Qingrui, her face turned pale. "Okay." Luoqiu nodded. "Okay, my ass. P.S. Follow the official WeChat account, Limiox's 666. Chapter 10-15. In the end, Luoqiu, Song Ying, and Zhang Qingrui ran into Song Haoran on their way back. "A wolf." Song Ying opened her mouth. "Or a wild boar, but it's not a big problem," Song Haoran said casually. However, his shirt was gone, and he was only wearing a pair of pants. It was hard to associate that with not a big problem. Even so, although Song Haoran did not have any clothes on his upper body, there were no wounds on his body, which made Song Ying feel at ease. "Really? Xiao Ying and Miss Zhang are trapped in a cave? What a coincidence!" Song Haoran smiled casually. "Where's Luoqiu? Where did you go?" "I just circled around the area," Luoqiu said casually. "I heard some strange sounds, so I found Song Ying and Zhang Qingrui." This was just Luoqiu's excuse. If he wanted to find someone, he would not have to use the method of hearing sounds. But for some reason, when Song Ying and Zhang Qingrui heard the word strange sounds, their expressions changed subtly. Zhang Qingrui was more shy after all. She blushed slightly and pulled her neck into her clothes. Song Haoran looked at the two ladies suspiciously, but he could not figure out what was going on. He had his own experience in the fog, and the mysterious man even left him a strange ancient book. Other than Mr. Blind, it was the first time he met such an undefeatable person. Even if he could revive more than 100 times, he still could not do anything to the mysterious man. Just this point alone made Song Haoran very interested in the ancient book left behind by the mysterious man. At this time, he was anxious to go back and study the ancient book, so he did not have much time to investigate what happened to Song Ying and Zhang Qingrui in the cave. As a result, there seemed to be some strange changes in the relationship between the two. "But since everyone is fine, let's go back quickly," Song Haoran, as an elder, said at this time, "otherwise father will definitely be angry. Put on your clothes first." Luoqiu took out a long-sleeved shirt from his backpack. The reason why he did not take out another coat was that he had taken out a lot of things in a row. It would be unreasonable to take out something bigger. "But, by the way, where did you buy this backpack? Can it really hold so many things?" Song Haoran looked curiously at the backpack after putting on the long-sleeved shirt that Luoqiu gave him. Luoqiu said at this time, "As long as you fold the things properly, there will be a way to store them." "Well, let's not talk about this nonsense. Let's go back quickly. It's completely dark." Song Ying pushed Song Haoran's back at this time. She did not care how many things the backpack could hold. She just wanted to go back as soon as possible, take a good bath, and think about what had happened today. There was no doubt that, just like those outdated wuxia novels, she ate something strange and then slept with a lady. So, she was also a lady herself, but whether it was Song Ying, Song Haoran, or Zhang Qingrui at this time subconsciously neglected one thing at this time. That was why the fog was so strange, and why the people who were originally in the Gazing Dragon Pavilion were suddenly separated at this time. Song Ying and Zhang Qingrui also saw that huge and horrible black shadow in the fog. But they did not mention it. It seemed that it was not strange at all. It seemed that as long as they hid it in their hearts, it seemed that it was not worth mentioning. Even it seemed that, isn't it a very normal thing? They did not speak on the way back. "You can reflect on yourself in your room tonight, and don't eat dinner," This was what Master Song said to Song Howren after they returned to the ancestral house of the Song family, because there was no doubt that Song Howren was the leader of these people who came back so late. Song Howren accepted the punishment very quickly. After leaving a cheeky smile, he walked to his room very coquettishly. Zhang Qingrui was a guest, so Master Song did not say much. As for Song Ying, Master Song just casually reprimanded her for a while, and then left it at that. Luoqiu, you must be tired after running all day. I asked Uncle Wu to save some food for you. Go back to your room after eating. Ah, okay. Luoqiu nodded. Song Ying rolled her eyes helplessly. This guy is your grandson, isn't he? But Song Ying was not in the mood to be jealous. She glanced at Zhang Qingrui. Zhang Qingrui said that she was tired before, so she said goodbye to her father and went back to the room prepared for her. Song Ying ate 2 mouthfuls of rice and went back to her room alone, leaving Luoqiu and Master Song chatting in the dining room. After the meal, Song Tianyu made tea and then asked, Luoqiu, there's something I want to discuss with you. Go ahead. Song Tianyu thought for a while. Mr. Blind asked me to do something before returning to the country. He seems to be looking for something, and he hopes that you can help him. Me? Luoqiu asked in surprise. I heard that Mr. Blind is an expert in geomancy. I don't think he needs my help, right? Song Tianyu smiled kindly and said, Mr. Blind left China a long time ago because of some things, and he hasn't been back for a long time. This time, he must have come back for something important. This time, he specifically asked you to help him, and I really couldn't refuse. If it weren't for Mr. Blind, the Song family wouldn't have achieved what it has today, so he asked me to do it. What do you think? That's nothing. Luoqiu nodded and said, But why are you looking for me? Song Tianyu told him the truth. Do you remember when Mr. Blind first met you in the morning hall? He said that you're a benefactor with unimaginable luck. He probably wants to borrow your luck. Of course, Mr. Blind also said that he won't let you help for free no matter if he can find it or not. As he spoke, old Master Song carefully took out a small box and opened it in front of Luoqiu. The box was a little old, and after opening it, there were 3 wax pills the size of longans inside. Song Tianyu said, This is a miracle medicine made by Mr. Blind himself. It can prolong one's life, cure all diseases, and even heal injuries. There are 3 pills in total, and they're extremely precious. The cost of making each pill is hundreds of millions of US dollars. This is his deposit. Luoqiu sat quietly in front of Song Tianyu for a while, then reached out and took the box. He took out one of the pills. I'll take these 2, and the remaining one is for you. This isn't good. Song Tianyu shook his head. Luoqiu said softly, It's New Year, isn't it normal to give something to the elders at home? The elders at home. Song Tianyu took it from Luoqiu's hands with great care. Even if it was him, Mr. Blind might not necessarily give him this miraculous pill. There was no superior and subordinate relationship between him and Mr. Blind, but more of a cooperative relationship. In other words, the Song family was relying on Mr. Blind, who was a miracle doctor. Old Master Song knew his own physical condition, so he was naturally tempted by such a miracle medicine. Now that he got it from Luoqiu's hands, he felt an unprecedented sense of satisfaction. I'll go back to my room first. Luoqiu said goodbye. Old Master Song nodded, watching Luoqiu leave. He sat in the dining room, boiling tea and drinking it slowly. He looked at the wax pill in his hand from time to time, thinking that it already had a taste even though the new year hadn't arrived yet. However, old Master Song's private phone rang at this moment. It was Zhang Lilanfang, the grandmother of Zhang Qingrui, whom he respected so much. Hello, elder sister Li. Brat Song, my granddaughter didn't suffer, did she? Haha. I dare to offend 10,000 people, but I dare not to offend you, elder sister. Song Tianyu was in a good mood, joking. I'll definitely treat your granddaughter like a Buddha. Alright, you're such a playboy. Zhang Lilanfang lowered her voice. I received a call from Qingrui this morning. Well, I'll go there alone this new year, and I won't go to your hometown either. But there's one thing I want you to prepare for. Song Tianyu was stunned. His heart stirred as he said, Big sister, you're talking about the tomb? Today, the Suzuki family from Japan sent us a message, saying that their people have arrived. I hope you can contact them as soon as possible. I've already talked to Seven, he'll take you there when we meet. Song Tianyu frowned and said, Big sister, I didn't mean to decline. After all, my people have already been arranged here. It's just that tomorrow night is New Year's Eve. Can't we wait until after the New Year? This is their request, I can't do anything about it. Zhang Lilanfang's voice was a bit helpless. Their opinion is that because it's the end of the year, all the domestic departments will have arrived, so it'll be more convenient for them to do it. No one can imagine that someone will excavate the imperial tomb during the new year. That's true. Song Tianyu nodded, then said helplessly, But it's a bit unlucky. You're a mercenary leader, why do you care about unlucky things? Zhang Lilanfang sneered, Don't be long-winded. The Suzuki family is willing to increase the cooperation fee by 30%, and they've agreed to share the excavated items with us. I'm afraid it's elder sister Li's credit, right? Song Tianyu laughed. Zhang Lilanfang didn't even see her granddaughter, so she must have been competing with her partner from Japan on the negotiation table these 2 days. Since elder sister Li has asked, then I have no problem. Song Tianyu nodded. Grandpa Song didn't care about the additional cooperation fee at all, he didn't need money. Instead, if there were any rare treasures excavated from the imperial tomb, it would be something that couldn't be measured by money. Okay, on the second day of the new year, Seven will come to you. Zhang Lilanfang said quickly, and there's one more thing, you need to pay more attention to it. Go ahead, elder sister. I know the relative you've just found is related to my Qingrui. Zhang Lilanfang paused for a while. If possible, I don't want them to be closer to each other. Song Tianyu's happy mood was suddenly covered with a layer of haze. He said calmly, Elder Sister Li, you're talking about Luoqiu, right? Why? Do you think I'm not good enough for your family? Brat Song, you know I only have one granddaughter. Zhang Lilanfang's voice was a bit cold. What a coincidence. Song Tianyu said coldly, she's the only descendant of my elder brother. Whoever looks down on her is the same as looking down on me. Those who look down on me haven't celebrated the new year for a long time. Song Tianyu, are you threatening me? That's not what I mean. Song Tianyu said calmly. I just hope elder sister Li can understand and don't forget what happened that year. How did you escape from the capital, and how did you fall into trouble? How did my Song family help you get through the difficulties? All these years, I've never forced you to repay me. You should be clear about what you promised. I regard Luoqiu as my grandson, so I'll satisfy him no matter what he wants. I hope you can be clear about this. After a long while, Zhang Lilanfang suddenly asked, If he wants the whole Song family, will you give it to him? Song Tianyu said directly, Yes. Let's not talk about this first. Zhang Lilanfang kept silent for a while. Let's finish this cooperation first. That's what I want. Song Tianyu nodded calmly. Thousands of miles away, in the study room of the Zhang family. She was actually very old. Her body was getting weaker day by day. However, she still needed to take care of the Zhang family and the Li family. Although she wasn't physically and mentally exhausted, she was almost there. She didn't know what would happen in 2 or 3 years. Zhang Lilanfang sighed, leaning on the chair and pondering, inheriting the Song family. If so, it's a way out. What a bad fate. Zhang Lilanfang took off her presbyopia glasses tiredly. She rubbed between her eyebrows and glanced at the photo frame on the table. It was a black and white and yellowed old photo of a young man and a young woman. Chapter 10:16. Shanghai, a certain airport. Although it was night, the airport was still particularly crowded. especially when it was said that there was a man-made bomb in the airport 2 days ago, and the gangster unfortunately fell to his death in the process of arrest. The security check in the airport had become stricter in the past 2 days. At this time, the flight from overseas had to move at the speed of a tortoise as it landed. The passengers in the cabin had safely landed. After unfastening their seat belts, they spent nearly 20 minutes of boredom. The first-class cabin had been reserved by someone. For the flight attendants on the plane, the passengers in the first-class cabin had a lot of potential, especially one of them, a young master named Hiruxin Suzuki. Just like the cold CEO in the same day, this kind of rich person who directly booked the first-class and business-class cabin was the ultimate goal of many of the ladies who worked hard to become flight attendants. As a matter of fact, the young master with the name Hiruxin Suzuki on the passenger list did indeed possess the qualities that most women adored. It was like, even if the other party was just a poor ordinary person, they wanted to have sex anyway to leave a trace of youth. Of course, another old man named Yuichi Suzuki with this Hiruxin Suzuki seemed to be within the scope of consideration. Few old people could have such a strong physique like this Mr. Yuichi Suzuki. Another advantage was that this Mr. Yuichi Suzuki was already 60 years old. If he unfortunately died in a few years, then as his widow, she should get a lot of inheritance, right? In fact, there was a third passenger in the first-class cabin. It was just that for the flight attendant, she still maintained her professional enthusiasm, but she didn't pay too much attention to it, because this third passenger seemed to be smiling apologetically to the Suzuki father and son along the way. There was really nothing to see. His name was Mu Xianghua, and he seemed to be a Japanese overseas Chinese. But along the way, the Suzuki father and son didn't seem to have any interest in the flight attendant, so the flight attendant could only choose to give up. Because the next time, she was afraid that she wouldn't meet them. They were just passers-by. In a short 1 or 2 hours, if nothing happened, they would probably drift away in this life. So the flight attendant was very sensible, and at the last moment, she didn't disturb and serve more enthusiastically. She just did her job. Master Chun Xian, that flight attendant seems to be very interested in you. Do you need my help? I know several senior executives in this airline. The man named Mu Xianghua at this time, with a face full of smiles, looked at Hiruxin Suzuki. This Suzuki family was a tyrant in the Kanto region of Japan. Not only did they have their own firm and company, but they also had the powerful Suzuki Kai. So it was really not good to offend them, or to curry favor with them, especially this Hiruxin Suzuki, who was the future successor of the Suzuki family. However, it was said that before Hiruxin Suzuki, there was a Natsuya Suzuki. But for some reason, last month, the head of the Suzuki family, Yuichi Suzuki, suddenly announced that all of his things would be inherited by his second son, Hiruxin Suzuki. But in fact, Mu Xianghua didn't care about this. For him, no matter who took over the Suzuki family in the future, it didn't matter to him. What mattered was whether he had the opportunity to be friends with the Suzuki family. Although this trip with the Suzuki family this time was ordered by his immediate superior, the Takizawa family. But recently, Mu Xianghua didn't receive any orders from the Takizawa family, so he had to follow the latest order and find the Suzuki family. Not long ago, Mu Xianghua had used his identity as an overseas Chinese to act as the middleman. At the behest of the Takizawa family, he had brought an ancient map to a certain family in Hua Nation and had a secret discussion. It was not until 1 or 2 days ago that the details of the cooperation were finalized. That was why he had accompanied the Suzuki family to Hua Nation on this flight. Don't do unnecessary things, we're not here for a vacation. Haruko Suzuki glanced at Mu Xianghua coldly. Okay, Master Chun Xian. The sharp gaze made Mu Xianghua feel like he was being stared at by a poisonous snake. He shrunk his neck subconsciously, only to feel that the air seemed to have suddenly become colder. As for Yuichi Suzuki, he didn't open his eyes from the beginning to the end. Along the way, the father and son of the Suzuki family didn't even speak a word, which gave Mu Xianghua an indescribable strange feeling. However, Mu Xianghua didn't know that the father and son of the Suzuki family did communicate with each other, but they had another way of communication that he didn't know. Let's call this method spiritual communication. Well, spiritual communication. Brother Lianjun, why does this fat pig think that I'm interested in these vulgar women? Don't disturb me, I'm trying my best to adapt to this body. Humph, it's so troublesome. Why did I agree to let you choose Yuichi Suzuki? Isn't this something that can't be helped? Brother Lianjun, you see, although Yuichi Suzuki saved his life in the Takizawa family's villa, half of his body is paralyzed and can't move at all. And the Suzuki family still listens to Yuichi Suzuki. If you don't temporarily rely on him, then how can we use the power of the Suzuki family? Humph, if you didn't want to get the marquee bead and beg, I wouldn't have agreed to you. Relax a little. Just treat your current body as a transmigration. Besides, there's nothing bad about leaving that small island country temporarily. Brother Lianjun, don't forget, what's the background of the other son of this body? However, as long as I can get the marquee bead in the mausoleum of Qin Shi Huang, then this old ancestor can fully recover, and at the same time heal the wound on your soul. So, this is a win-win situation, Brother Lianjun. But I have a bad feeling. You know, this year is the Penglai gathering that happens once every 10 years. And the place that the map points to is in the middle of Mount Tai. During the Penglai gathering, half of the Taoists and demons in Kelowna will gather. That's why we need the identities of Yuichi Suzuki and Hiruxin Suzuki, right? Don't worry, under this old ancestor's ability, not many people can see through us. I hope so. That's right, it's this pair of brothers in distress. At this moment, the cabin door of the plane finally connected with the passage, and the passengers could officially leave. Haruko Suzuki stood up, straightened his clothes, and said with a smile, I haven't been back for a long time, this air is really nostalgic. In fact, this was the first time that Zhuifeng took a transportation tool called a bullet train, and Zhuifeng had to admit that this kind of machine made by humans was really a little terrifying. Wind-chasing Wolf knew that he couldn't run thousands of kilometers at such a high speed without stopping and even maintain a uniform speed. He was afraid that he would be so tired that he would lie on the ground before he could run half the distance at such a speed. Even so, Zhuifeng still yawned out of boredom. Brother Mo Xiaofei on the opposite seat was in high spirits, and even muttered something. He said that if he had such an advanced tool, the transportation of the army wouldn't be so tedious, and the unification of the 6 countries would be a simple task. In short, in Zhuifeng's opinion, Brother Mo Xiaofei's illness was acting up again, and it wasn't mild. Brother Mo Xiaofei was sitting upright, looking at the instant noodles on the table. The smell of instant noodles was almost everywhere in this section of the carriage. What a convenient dry food. If I had such technology, I wouldn't have to worry about the food problem during the march. Compared to the advanced transportation technology, this food technology can be said to be superior. No, I can't keep my eyelids open. Zhuifeng propped his chin on his hand and looked at Brother Mo Xiaofei, yawning again. I've decided. After this trip is over, I will definitely pay a visit to this Master Kong and grasp this technique in my hands. Zhuifeng, did you hear that? Master Kong. Who's that? It seems that we'll arrive at Mount Tai railway station at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. So sleepy. Zhuifeng, Brother Mo. I'm asking you, why don't you answer me? Mo Xiaofei's voice suddenly became gloomy and cold. But this couldn't drive away Zhuifeng's sleepiness. He yawned again, saying casually, I heard you, brother. But brother, you're so powerful, why do you need the army? Mo Xiaofei said indifferently, Brother Zhuifeng, you're living in the modern era, so of course you don't know. Today, I've done some research on the internet and found that many things of the past in the modern society have been hidden. Not to mention monsters and mortals like you, even martial artists have almost disappeared without a trace. And then, at that time, the world was in turmoil, and there were constant man-made disasters. The 6 countries were unhindered, and the people had no way to make a living. Mo Xiaofei shook his head, not to mention the monster disaster and Dao disaster. Monster disaster? Dao disaster? There was a drought in the south, and thousands of miles of land were barren. The people were displaced, and countless people died of starvation. There was a flood dragon in the East Sea, and it often pounced on people who went out to the sea as food. Even in the imperial court, there were monsters disguised as ministers and nibbling away at the country. The monster race was scattered everywhere, and they liked to move around. The people were miserable, and this was called the monster disaster. Mo Xiaofei snorted. As for the Dao disaster, at that time the art of alchemy was popular, and the rich families worshipped the alchemist as a god, praying for an elixir so that they could ascend to immortality and transcend worldly affairs. But they didn't know that the golden stone elixir was always a highly poisonous thing, making people addicted to it and unable to extricate themselves. Gradually, they became addicted and could not produce. The heretics preached among the people, challenging the legal system and despising the royal power. Mo Xiaofei looked at Zhuefeng at this time and suddenly slammed the small table in front of his seat. This immediately woke Zhuefeng up. Mo Xiaofei snorted coldly. The 3 disasters of humans, demons, and Taoists are in chaos. Let me ask you, if there is no army, how can I pacify the world? Zhuefeng was not sleepy at this time, but he didn't understand. But brother, think about it. If there are monsters everywhere, can humans really beat them? You're talking about drought, flood dragon, and these are the legendary big monsters in our monster race. Mo Xiaofei nodded at this time. Indeed, the power of the monster race is extraordinary, and ordinary soldiers can't fight against it. In the past, I lost a lot of soldiers every time I fought against the monsters that were causing chaos. It's just that although the human race is weak, it doesn't mean they can't protect themselves. At least, there is the Xianyuan Palace in the human race. Although the monster race is rampant in the world, they don't dare to attack the Peak country. Xianyuan Palace. I seem to have heard of it somewhere? Zhuefeng was stunned. Xianyuan Palace. Brother, where is it? Mo Xiaofei looked at Zhuefeng strangely. Why, as a monster, you don't know about the Xianyuan Palace. I seem to have heard of it somewhere. Zhuefeng shook his head, but I don't remember. He had been a vagrant since he was a child, living a precarious life. How could he pay attention to those things in the monster race? Mo Xiaofei said, in ancient times there was a human emperor, the Xianyuan Emperor. This Xianyuan Palace is the legacy left by the human emperor. Legend has it that the Xianyuan Palace is located in the Xianyuan Mound of the North Sea, but no one can find its specific location until now. At that time, the 6 countries were in constant wars, and the monster race was rampant. The descendants of the Xianyuan Palace entered the world and wiped out the evil in the world. At that time, a large number of capable monsters were subdued by the Xianyuan Palace and became servants. After that, the descendants of the Xianyuan Palace warned the monsters in the world, which made the monsters restrain themselves. Later, the Xianyuan Palace began to remove the source of the disasters in the world, which gave the world a chance to breathe. I remember now. Xianyuan Palace. Isn't this the place where Sir Chichikamaya and Sir Ghostchild came from? Ignoring Zhuefeng's wild thoughts, Mo Xiaofei said indifferently, the Emperor's martial arts I taught you, the fist technique of the Emperor shocking the world fist, also came from the Xianyuan Palace. Legend has it that this martial art was created by the human emperor, Xianyuan Palace, which is why it has such incredible power. Why did the Xianyuan Palace impart such a powerful martial art to you? Zhuefeng asked in confusion. Emo Xiaofei said indifferently, the Xianyuan Palace only deals with disasters and monster disasters. As for man-made disasters, it doesn't care. It says that since the world belongs to the human race, the internal conflicts of the human race should naturally be resolved by the human race. This Emperor's martial arts was imparted to me, which means that I'm qualified to pacify the world. Wow. Big brother, you're amazing! At this moment, Xuefeng really admired him. Originally, he was a child who yearned for heroism very much. But big brother. Xuefeng frowned at this moment and suddenly said, by the way, is your instant noodles burnt? While talking, Emo Xiaofei didn't uncover the instant noodles at all. Chapter 10:17. Long Shiruo was sitting cross-legged with her eyes closed, in the posture of a child. This room was the most private place in one of Xianyuan Palace's villas in Mount Tai. Chichikamaya had set up a large number of defense measures inside and outside the room. When Long Shiruo came in, it was not because she wanted to heal her wounds, but to concentrate on operating her created body. Each use of the created body had a time limit, and Long Shiruo had to pay her own essence and blood. Moreover, it would consume a lot of her spiritual power in the process of using it. Her current level of spiritual power was almost the same as that of an ordinary human child. At most, her tenacity and willpower were at an inhuman level, but it was a heavy burden for her to use the created body continuously. At this time, Long Shiruo's crystal-clear face was covered with sweat. Luo Dance accompanied her in the room and was wiping her gently. Luo Dance stared at Sister Long nervously. She couldn't help but worry in her heart. I don't know when that person will leave. Today, there was a guest in the villa, who also came from Xianyuan Palace. It seemed that this person's position in Xianyuan Palace was similar to that of Grandpa Chichikamaya. He directly called Grandpa Chichikamaya's name without any courtesy. His name was Gongsun Xiu. A long time ago, Gongsun Xiu? Long Shiruo, who had just returned to the villa from the pool, was in a bad mood. However, the moment she came back, she heard the name which made her even more upset. Why didn't this guy stay in his nest? Why did he come out? Chichikamaya shook his head. I'm also very curious. But since Gongsun came out, I'm afraid he has other plans. Lord Long, you should know that Xianyuan Palace is like a dragon without a head since Her Highness left. When Kelowna was in chaos, Xianyuan Palace suppressed both the Taoist and monster realms. They subdued all the monsters and reorganized them into the Kuan department. As for the soldiers who originally belonged to Yellow Emperor's clan, they were called Qian. Over the past thousands of years, the two divisions of Qian and Kuan have had conflicts from time to time. Long Shiruo waved his hand in annoyance and said, I won't interfere in the affairs of the Xianyuan Palace. How you want to talk to Gongsun Xiu is your own business. Chichikamaya knew that Long Shiruo would definitely give such an answer. He could only say, but Gongsun Xiu is here to visit you, Lord Long. If you don't meet him, I'm afraid it won't be good. But if Gongsun knows about your current situation, I'm afraid it will be even worse. After all, Gongsun Xiu was a very talented and ambitious individual. All these years, the Qian tribe has been restraining themselves, and Gongsun Xiu has also been restraining himself. You should know why. After all, before your highness, Xuanyuan's legitimate heir is you, Princess Shiruo. This title has nothing to do with me for a long time. Don't mention it again. Long Shiruo shook his head and sneered. Besides, do you think your status as a princess can suppress Gongsun Xiu? He's not afraid of the so-called legitimate heir. He's only afraid of Shinryu's power. The Xianyuan Palace dominated both the Daoist and Yao realms, while Kelowna and Shinryu dominated the human realm. Chichikamaya sighed and said, Lord Long, please forgive me. I can't sleep or eat well without knowing Gongsuan's intentions. All right. Long Shiruo didn't want to see Chichikamaya in a difficult position. I'll go and prepare. I hope Gongsun Xiu won't cause any trouble for me. otherwise I'll send him back. It was said that the Yellow Emperor was the son of Xiaodian and Fu Bao. His original surname was Gongsun, but he later changed his surname to Ji and was called Ji Xianyuan. He lived in Xianyuan Hill and was known as the Xianyuan clan. In the Xianyuan Palace there were many people with the surname Gongsun. They were all descendants of the ancient Xianyuan clan. However, there was only one bloodline of the Yellow Emperor, so the Gongsun clan couldn't call themselves the Xianyuan clan. However, there were outstanding people in the Gongsun clan who inherited part of the Yellow Emperor's bloodline. They were like monsters. Gongsun Xiu belonged to the younger generation of the Gongsun clan. Of course, the base age of such a young person was at least 100 years. Because of the ancient training method to break through the limits of mortals, the members of the Qian clan could easily live up to a few hundred years. Those who were successful in training could even live up to 1,000 years. Gongsun Xiu should be 729 years old this year. However, his appearance was fixed the moment he broke through the limit. In terms of appearance, Gongsun Xiu had delicate features, but he wasn't delicate. He had a unique charm. Based on appearance alone, this was the limit of what a human could achieve after a perfect genetic modification. Long Shirua sat in front of the desk and looked at Gongsun Xiu, who was respectfully standing in front of him with his hands behind his back, as well as an attendant behind him. This attendant seemed to be an outstanding talent in the Gongsun clan. Long Shirua had gone back to the Xianyuan palace when he was bored, so he had some impression of this guy called Gongsun Jishui. His appearance is not bad. He can go out and be a star or something. At least he won't starve to death. The true dragon's enormous aura filled the study at all times. This aura made all Kelowna citizens feel fear from the depths of their souls. Chichi Kamaya couldn't relax in the study. Lord Long is still as humorous as ever. Gongsun Xiu smiled. If Xiu really becomes a star, I'm afraid he'll be cursed by his clansmen. Long Shirua said indifferently, then you can go out as a group. You Gongsun clan members are all good-looking anyway. If everyone is the same, there won't be any cursing. This was completely bullsh *ting. Gongsun Xiu sighed and said seriously, Lord Long, Xiu left the palace because I have something to do. I hope you can understand, Lord Long. Is it very important? Long Shirua said indifferently, if it's not important, then don't say it. Mount Tai is in a mess right now, I don't have time to care about the Gongsun clan. Gongsun Xiu said calmly, Princess Shirua, do you also think the succession of the Xianyuan palace is a small matter? Long Shirua narrowed her eyes. Gongsun Xiu met her gaze without fear. A vast aura flowed around Gongsun Xiu's body. This was the power of the Yellow Emperor. Gongsun Xiu was one of those freaks who inherited the power of the Yellow Emperor even though he was from a branch family. This guy could barely use the Xianyuan sword of Kelowna. Tell me, what is it? Long Shirua heaved a sigh of relief. Gongsun Xiu said, Earlier, I wasn't in a good mood, so I sensed the movement of the Xianyuan sword. Lord Long, has the Xianyuan sword been used before? Was it you or Princess Zijuan? Xianyuan sword? Long Shirua paused. Gongsun Xiu was probably talking about the incident when Xiang Lu stole the spirit vein. During that incident, Su Zijuan impulsively activated the divine sword Xianyuan. Gongsun Xiu was one of the people who could use the divine sword Xianyuan, so it wasn't strange that he sensed it. I used it. Is there a problem? Long Shirua said casually, or I can't use it. Lord Long, you used the Xianyuan sword. I'm afraid it's not a small matter. Gongsun Xiu hurriedly said, Do we need to use the warriors of the Qian clan? I just used it to wipe the dust. Why do you have so many problems? Long Shirua snorted, I can use it as a drying rack. Okay, it's okay. You can go back. I'm fine. Don't worry. Gongsun Xiu looked at Long Shirua silently for a while, then said, Princess Shirua, can you tell me where Princess Zijuan is? The Xianyuan Palace can't be without a leader. This time, felicitous reign left the palace under the orders of the elders. Everyone in our clan hopes that Princess Zijuan can return to the throne as soon as possible. Ha, what does it have to do with me if you can't find her? Long Shirua snorted. You're useless if your fiancé leaves. Don't blame me. I don't do arranged marriages here. Lord Long, Master Siu is only doing this for the Xianyuan Palace. But at this moment Gongsun Jishui, who was standing behind Gongsun Siu, took a step forward and said in a tone that was neither servile nor overbearing, Young Master Siu is definitely not a useless person. He is the most outstanding successor of the Gongsun clan in thousands of years. A dragon's roar could be heard in the room. It sounded like a dragon's roar that came from the bottom of his heart. The room was small, but at that moment it felt infinite. Above his head, there was a huge golden dragon circling around, looking down. Shinryu, the totem of Huaxia's people, the golden dragon. The trembling in his heart made Gongsun Shirshui's throat shake. A drop of cold sweat rolled down his forehead. Lord Long, please calm down. Gongsun Shiu quickly got down on one knee and lowered his head. Shirshui doesn't know etiquette. I will teach him a lesson when we return. I hope Lord Long can forgive Shirshui's rudeness. If there's nothing else, go back. Don't get in my way, Long Shirua said indifferently. Then, he stood up and walked out of the study. After Long Shira left, Gongsun Shirshui's legs went soft and he sat down on the ground. This is Shinryu's. Ha ha ha, Gongsun, don't mind it. Chichi Kamaya walked over with a smile. Lord Long's temperament has always been like this. You didn't get scared, did you? Old turtle, you must be joking. Gongsun Shiu stood up and said indifferently, How would I dare to disrespect Lord Long? I respect him from the bottom of my heart. I know you're anxious to find Princess Zijuan. Chichi Kamaya said with a smile, I'm the same as you. I'm very anxious. It's just that Princess Zijuan's whereabouts are a mystery. This old one is very troubled. How about this? Once there's news about Princess Zijuan, I'll inform you immediately. How about it? Then I'll have to trouble old turtle. Gongsun Shiu nodded, however. I don't plan on going back for now. It's rare for me to leave the palace. I want to take a good look around. Chichi Kamaya raised his eyes slightly and looked at Gongsun Shiu. If that's the case, then treat it as a relaxing trip. I'll be here for a while. If there's anything you need, don't hesitate to look for me. Gongsun Shiu smiled. If there's a need, I'll naturally trouble Old Turtle. However, Old Turtle, don't worry. The Qian tribe has some properties nearby. I can take care of myself. As for Lord Long, I'll have to trouble Old Turtle to take care of him. Gongsun Shiu clasped his hands and bowed to Chichi Kamaya. Then, I'll take my leave. Gui Qianyi also saluted back silently at this moment. After Gongsun Shiu turned around, he bent down and helped Gongsun Shirshui up. Only then did he leave calmly. Chichi Kamaya shook his head and sat on the sofa in the study. He made tea and drank it. Not long after, Ghost Child came back and said that Gongsun Shiu and Gongsun Shirshui had left the villa. Chichi Kamaya suddenly said, Actually, Gongsun Shiu is not bad. He's barely worthy of Princess Zijuan. It's a pity. Also, this descendant of the Xianyuan royal family always has a regrettable personality. Sigh. Master Turtle, Lord Long hasn't gone far. Ghost Child suddenly said. Chichi Kamaya's hand trembled. He hurriedly glanced at the door of the study. Seeing that it was completely closed, he let out a sigh of relief. Then, he glared at Ghost Child. Ghost Child's lips curled up in a playful smile. You're always learning bad things. Chichi Kamaya rolled his eyes. Then, he said seriously, but this time, Gongsun Shirshui didn't leave the palace because of Princess Zijuan. The princess has left the palace for so many years. If she wanted to come out, she would have come out long ago. Then I'll send a few brothers to follow Gongsun Shiu. Ghost Child said directly. Chi-Chi Kamaya said, there are too many people with superpowers in the Gongsun family. Gongsun Shui looked weak just now, but in terms of strength, he's not to be underestimated. Now we need you to go personally. Got it. I'll do it right away. Ghost Child nodded. Chi-Chi Kamaya also nodded. But when Ghost Child was about to leave, he suddenly shouted and asked abruptly, did you finish the photo I asked you to make last time? Ghost Child said expressionlessly, I'll do it this time. After leaving Chi-Chi Kamaya's villa, Gongsun Shiu quickly got into a black business class car. When the car was completely out of the residential area, Gongsun Shui suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. Gongsun Shiu said indifferently, how is it? Gongsun Shui wiped the blood on the corner of his mouth. His face looked a bit pale, but his voice was quite stable. He said indifferently, as expected of the power of Shinryu. Just the pressure of Shinryu almost broke my blood vessels. Gongsun Shiu chuckled. Long Shirua is still so powerful. He suddenly stretched out his hand and clenched it. I really wish I could have such an invincible true dragon's power. Gongsun Shui glanced at him and said indifferently, don't play with fire. Also, I've already used my X-ray vision on Chi-Chi Kamaya's villa, and there's nothing suspicious. But there's a place with multiple restrictions that I can't see through. I originally planned to use the excuse of infuriating Long Shirua and use my power to pretend to resist and try to penetrate it. But Shinryu is too powerful, I can't protect myself. It doesn't matter. Gongsun Shiu said indifferently, I'm sure that Princess Zijuan isn't here. As long as she's not here, it won't affect me. The car suddenly became silent. After a while, Gongsun Shui asked, where are we going now? Chapter 10:18. It was the 30th day of the 12th lunar month. Suitable. Getting married, going out, building a grave, entering a house, asking for help, offering sacrifices. Forbidden. Praying for blessings and breaking the ground. At noon, the Song family had returned from the ancestral grave and finished offering sacrifices. Zhang Qingrue naturally wouldn't participate in this kind of family activity. After she came back yesterday, she said that she wasn't feeling well and didn't leave her room for the whole day. Song Haoran guessed that Zhang Qingrue caught a cold because Song Haoran took them out for an outing yesterday. Therefore, on the way to the ancestral grave, he dragged Song Haoran out and taught him a good lesson. Luoqiu had never seen Song Tianyu really teach Song Haoran a lesson, so he didn't know how Song Tianyu taught this young master of the Song family. But on the way here, he saw it. It should be a dignified iron fist that could become a father, right? According to Uncle Wu, the master wouldn't teach the young master a lesson in front of outsiders because he was afraid that it would make people think that the young master was incompetent, especially in front of the villagers. But in fact, the master still liked this way of teaching in private. Uncle Wu was a very good talker. At least Luoqiu understood what he meant. Because it was the afternoon of the last day of the lunar calendar, when they came back, his father rolled up his sleeves and said that he would personally cook a table full of dishes. Many times, Luoqiu actually felt that Song Tianyu was no different from ordinary retired old people who were so bored that they could only play chess with others in the park to pass the time. But he was also the founder of the Song family's empire. Maybe for Song Tianyu, such a relaxing day was precious. I'll go and help. Luoqiu smiled and made a request that made Song Tianyu very happy. As for Song Haoran, he hid in his room after coming back, which seemed a little mysterious. Of course, he had always been a bit mysterious, and the people of the Song family were already used to it. Or rather, it would be abnormal if the young master became normal. However, Miss Ing, who was supposed to be the most normal person in the Song family, seemed to be a little silent today. Even her behavior was a little strange. For example, the bodyguards accompanying her on this trip found Miss Song Ing sneaking around in front of Miss Zhang's room for some reason. Of course, it didn't matter how strange the master's affairs were, so the smart bodyguards didn't go forward to ask or discuss. Instead, they quietly flew out a small stone and knocked on the window sill of Miss Zhang's room. Then, they directly turned around and left, hiding their fame. The Song family's ancestral home was a rather old-fashioned building. The windowsill opened from the bottom up and was supported by wooden strips. When Zhang Qingrui opened the window and saw Song Ying at the door, Miss Song Ying also saw her. Zhang Qingrui paused for a moment, then felt her face heating up. Song Ying hesitated for a moment, then nodded and said, "Hi." Song Ying was holding something in her hands. "What's the matter, Miss Song Ying?" Zhang Qingrui was a well-educated person after all. She forced herself to hold back the uncomfortable feeling in her heart and asked first. Song Ying hurriedly said, "I heard from Uncle Wu that you didn't go out the whole morning. He said you didn't feel well, right?" Song Ying walked to the windowsill, and there was a window between them. "Just a little dizzy," Zhang Qingrui said softly. Song Ying said, "Here are some medicines, you can take them first." "Don't worry, the medicines here are developed by the pharmaceutical factory under my family. I'm sure they're safe. I've taken them many times." "Medicines?" Zhang Qingrui gave a start. Song Ying said, "Some antibiotics. According to the person who developed it, it can increase the body's immune system and kill a lot of useless bacteria in the body. Didn't I eat something strange yesterday? I thought that although I didn't feel anything wrong, I should be more careful. In addition, for the sake of insurance, I think we should do a comprehensive examination first. After all, we don't know if there are any sequelae." You didn't tell anyone?" Zhang Qingrui suddenly asked after a moment of silence. Song Ying shook her head. Zhang Qingrui agreed. "Then, when should we do the examination?" "There seems to be a women's hospital nearby. I just checked it on the internet." Song Ying took out her mobile phone and showed the information to Zhang Qingrui. Zhang Qingrui couldn't help frowning after a glance at the introduction. "Is there a problem?" Song Ying asked in surprise. Zhang Qingrui shook her head. "Well, I don't care about the hospital in Putian. After all, it's just a checkup. But why is it a women's hospital? I think there are more female doctors." Song Ying said casually, "I don't like male doctors." Zhang Qingrui looked at Song Ying strangely, and at the same time, she was a little flustered. Seeing her expression, Song Ying gave a start and then said quickly, "It's not what you think. I'm normal." "I didn't say it's abnormal," Zhang Qingrui said in a low voice. "Didn't you say it's very common abroad?" I just said it casually." At that time, Song Ying blushed and murmured, "After all, it was so embarrassing at that time, shouldn't I say something, haha." Zhang Qingrui covered her mouth and chuckled. As Song Ying watched, she began to laugh as well. At this time, the atmosphere had become much better, and the awkwardness from the beginning was no longer there. Maybe women were really magical creatures. Both of them suddenly had such a feeling. "What's the good news?" In the laughter, such a question came, but it didn't make them feel abrupt. It was a very comfortable interruption of words. Song Ying and Zhang Qingrui looked over at the same time and saw Luoqiu. At this moment, Luoqiu was holding a basket in his hand. There were many plants in the basket. It seemed to be some kind of wild vegetables. Both of them lived a life of luxury. Although Song Ying had undergone wilderness survival training, she could not be said to be well-versed in everything, so she could not recognize what was in the basket. Of course, this wasn't the most important thing. The most important thing was that Luoqiu appeared here. "Why are you here?" both of them asked at the same time. "I picked some wild vegetables for the old man, so we can make some cold dishes at night." Luoqiu blinked and then smiled. "You seem to have a good relationship." "Friendship," Song Ying said coldly. Zhang Qingrui nodded slightly at this time. Luoqiu was surprised. "I know about friendship, but you don't have to emphasize it." "Friendship," Song Ying emphasized again suddenly. It was a bit weird, But at this time, between Zhang Qingrui in front of the window and Song Ying standing here, there was a very comfortable feeling. If there were spirits in this world, they should be flying between the two of them right now. It was a bit dazzling. I'll take the things to the kitchen first. Luochio didn't have enough, but he chose to leave. Seeing him disappear at the corner of the corridor, Song Ying let out a sigh of relief. She glanced at Zhang Qingrui and found that she was also looking at her, so she smiled. Are we going to the hospital? If we go, I'll find a car now. Then take it as going for a ride. Zhang Qingrui also smiled. There was still an afternoon before the dinner, so a round trip should be enough. Different from the vampires in the cognition, Jessica wasn't afraid of the sunlight at least. She just felt that the sunlight was a little dazzling. But the dazzling sunlight could also be felt when she was a human being. Perhaps Hitorigami and vampires were really different in nature. Perhaps they should be called zombies. Jessica had heard some legends about zombies from her current master, Suzijuan. Zombies didn't age or die, and only feelings were the source of their power. Hatred could make Jessica's power grow rapidly, but at the same time, it would make it easier for her to die. But whether she should continue to hate, Suzijuan only said, "Do whatever you want." She should be an irresponsible elder. After all, Jessica became a zombie after being bitten by Suzijuan. She and Suzijuan were now in the airport of Jinan. After days of rushing, Suzijuan finally came back to this country on the last day before the New Year. Jessica had visited the New Year's festival in Chinatown with Yi Yan before, so she was familiar with the festive decorations of this country. But in fact, she didn't like the bright red color. This color was a symbol of happiness and auspiciousness in this country. But actually, red only reminded her of blood. Jessica was tall like a model. She was wearing a tight black leather suit, which made her look very sexy. In addition, her indifferent expression gave people a sense of coldness, which made people turn their heads to look at her. As for Suzijuan, she was much more low-key. She wore a cap, a mask and glasses, and wrapped herself in a loose down jacket. At the same time, she hid her hair. It was hard to distinguish her gender even if she stood in front of them. Jessica was puzzled. As an international criminal police officer, she always felt that Suzijuan dressed like this because she was afraid of being recognized. Could it be that the powerful Suzijuan also had enemies that she was afraid of? Don't think too much. I just don't want to provoke some troublesome guys. Suzijuan snorted. Do you want to be followed all the time? Even when you go to the toilet, someone will wait outside. That feeling was probably similar to guarding a prisoner. As a criminal police officer, Jessica had gone on many missions with Yi Yan. Most of the time, they needed to be guarded 24 hours a day during the process of escorting criminals. Of course, she didn't want to be treated like this. However, Suzijuan didn't talk much about her own affairs. But because of this sentence, Jessica could vaguely guess something. But then again, Jiang, do you need to go to the toilet? Jessica was puzzled. I don't need it recently? But at this moment, Suzijuan suddenly lowered her cap, saying in a low voice, Follow me. Also, use the breathing method that I taught you to make your heart beat. It's easy to be recognized if you don't breathe or have a heartbeat. Jessica gave a start and frowned subconsciously. Then, she looked around. She didn't see anything, but vaguely felt that there seemed to be someone's eyes moving back and forth. This wasn't a special superpower, but an instinctive intuition that she had developed as a criminal police officer for many years. Suzijuan and Jessica quickly blended into the crowd and left the airport. After that, they got into a taxi that they had called using a taxi app. After getting on the taxi, Suzijuan patted the driver's shoulder directly. Then, the driver lost his aura and drove away with a blank look, like a toy puppet. Suzijuan took off her cap and mask. Seeing this, Jessica knew that they should be out of the dark surveillance. She lowered her voice and asked, What kind of people are they? People? I'm afraid there's more than that. Suzijuan twirled her hair with her fingers. there are at least 3 different groups of people in the airport. Some are from the Tao world and some are from the demon world. Besides, there are also people from a department of the country. Tao, demon. These were the knowledge that Su Zijuan briefly explained to Jessica on the way. They all came for you? Jessica asked in surprise. Su Zijuan shook her head. I don't think so. Maybe they're here to guard, just like the security guards in the airport. But this kind of defense seems a bit strict. Something might have happened in Mount Tai. Otherwise, the range of defense wouldn't have extended to the airport. Jessica nodded and said, Since they're not here for you, it's a good thing. Su Zijuan said coldly, If they're here for me, it's a good thing. If it's someone else, it'll be worse. Do you have a lot of enemies? Jessica asked seriously. Su Zijuan didn't answer directly this time, but simply said, Are there many people who are on the same side as you? People who are on the same side. I'm not a human anymore. Jessica looked out of the window. The blue sky was filled with white clouds, but the cold wind was biting cold. She wondered if Yi Yen was also looking at the same sky. She thought. The black MPV stopped in front of a secluded tea house. Although it was the eve of Chinese New Year's Eve, the tea house was still open. After getting off the car, Gongsun Xiu ordered Gongsun Shui to wait outside the door. Gongsun Xiu walked all the way. After a while, he walked through the lobby of the tea house and entered the interior. Finally, he came to a pavilion built in the middle of a pool. At this moment, someone was playing the guqin in the pavilion. It was a rather desolate sound, which made the surrounding bleak and desolate. Chapter 10:19. Zhuefeng bought some dumplings from a small restaurant next to the Taishan railway station. Then, he and Emo Xiaofei sat at a free rest area outside the railway station and started eating. Although it was just a disposable lunchbox, Zhuefeng bought a lot of food. Apart from dumplings, there were some other meat dishes, so it looked quite sumptuous. As for why they ate here, firstly, Emo Xiaofei didn't like crowded places. Secondly, Zhuefeng said it was New Year's Eve, so they had to eat a good meal. The cash they plundered from the house in the bamboo forest was not much. Moreover, brother Emo Xiaofei liked to buy and buy. He was now equipped with a whole set of digital products. Windchaser, who had been managing the funds since he came out of the bamboo forest, even though he didn't care about money, he was a little worried now. This time, before Zhuefeng and Emo Xiaofei went out, Emo Xiaofei had already informed his family. Therefore, they didn't need to worry about them when they were still outside on New Year's Eve. Because brother Emo Xiaofei had a screw loose, Zhuefeng had secretly sent a message to Emo Xiaofei's parents to inform them that they were safe. So, he managed to cope with it. New Year's Eve. Emo Xiaofei frowned at the sumptuous food in front of him. For him, it was indeed sumptuous. The Qin dynasty was more than 2,000 years ago, and the cooking techniques were very simple. Although modern food had many additives, in terms of pure stimulation to the taste buds, it was indeed incomparable to the pre-Qin era, even though the ingredients of the food in front of them were not high-quality ingredients. Yeah. Zhuefeng nodded while eating the dumplings bought by sister-in-law's dumpling restaurant. Tomorrow is New Year's Eve. Brother, don't you know? Emo Xiaofei shook his head. The New Year's Eve that I'm used to has passed. The New Year's Eve is long. Zhuefeng blinked. No, it's tomorrow. How can it pass? Emo Xiaofei said indifferently. The New Year's Eve is in October of the Xia calendar. The Chinese New Year in October. Zhuefeng swallowed the dumpling and continued to pick up the second dumpling. His brother's head was acting up again. But speaking of which, I heard that if someone is stupid, they can give him a punch on the head. Who knows, they might be able to come back to normal. Or should I secretly give my big brother a punch on the back of his head? Coincidentally, he could also test out the power of the first move of the Imperial Fist technique. Big brother, just wait for me to use my beloved Iron Fist to help you recover. Zhuefeng, someone is approaching. Mo Xiaofei suddenly lowered his voice and said coldly. This made Zhu Feng almost choke. He quickly gulped down a mouthful of coke, patted his chest, and then hurriedly became alert. Behind him, there were two men in black suit. One was thin, while the other was tall and sturdy, with a face full of beard. As for this bearded man, he gave Zhu Feng a familiar feeling. In addition, Zhu Feng also felt a trace of Yao Qi from him. Was this man also a Yao Qi? The thin man put his hand on Zhu Feng's shoulder and said directly, "You, come to me to register." Windchaser frowned and subconsciously looked at Mo Xiaofei, only to see Big Brother Mo Xiaofei nodding calmly at this moment. The place was a quiet alley outside the Taishan railway station. Zhu Feng was still holding the food box, eating dumplings. Mo Xiaofei was standing with his hands behind his back, with an extraordinary bearing. This extraordinary bearing was not what Zhu Feng thought, but was felt by the two men in black in front of him. The two men in black looked at each other. The skinny man took out a small black book and said slowly, "My name is Yun Hui. I'm a member of the Special Administrative Bureau's Investigation Department. This is my identification. And this is my colleague, Old Wolf." Mo Xiaofei glanced at the ID Yun Hui took out casually, then said indifferently, "What's the matter? You're quite arrogant." Old Wolf sneered at this time and took a step forward. There was a sense of oppression from his body. However, this kind of oppression didn't make Windchaser, who was eating dumplings, feel abnormal. Even Mo Xiaofei, who he thought was just an ordinary person, didn't move at all. Old Wolf seemed to be increasing the pressure it was exerting, but Yun Hui reached out and stopped it. Old Wolf had no choice but to stop. Yun Hui smiled. "It's like this. Taishan is currently under special management. All the Yao Qi and Inhuman who enter Taishan need to be registered and recorded." But, as he spoke, Yun Hui took out a box in his hand. The box projected a small screen. On the screen, there was an interface that looked like an identity information. However, the interface was gray and there were many question marks. "You don't seem to be on our registration list. In fact, we do a census every year. But why is this Mr. not in our database?" "Widowed me?" Mo Xiaofei frowned at this moment. Yun Hui nodded. "That's right, it's you, mister. But Mr. Zhu Feng beside you is in our database. Take a look." As he spoke, Yun Hui twisted a button on the box. The projected interface suddenly changed and displayed Windchaser's identity information. Zhu Feng blinked, looking at the information interface in disbelief. Name, Zhu Feng. Race, Aardwolf. Yao age, about 60. Current living location and current status, XX city, dropout, unemployed. Danger level, level 1. Harmless. You really have it? Zhu Feng blinked, looking surprised. "But, why don't I remember making such a registration?" Yun Hui said indifferently, "XX city is under Consultant Long's jurisdiction. There's no one from the Administration Bureau. The information of the Yao Qi in the city is updated by that lord every year. Although you didn't fill in the form of your guardian, we assume that your guardian is Consultant Long. So, your information should be updated by Consultant Long. It's not surprising that you don't know. As for why Consultant Long didn't tell you, you should ask him yourself. Also, I'm curious, why are you in this place?" Consultant Long. Zhu Feng was still confused. Yun Hui cleared his throat. "That is, Long Shira Lord Long, why didn't you say so earlier? Consultant Long, don't you think it's weird?" Zhu Feng rolled his eyes. Yun Hui was also quite embarrassed. Which Yao Qi wouldn't be polite after hearing about the Administration Bureau? Even those who didn't like it would show some respect on the surface. "I know you came from Long Shirua's territory, but you don't know this." Even so, Yun Hui still maintained his politeness. He cleared his throat again and said, "Let's talk about this mister. First, I want to confirm this mister's name and whether he's from our world. Mr. Zhu Feng, you should know that the country doesn't allow ordinary people to know about our existence. If this mister is an ordinary person, we can only do some research. What? You want to know my big brother? Zhuefeng threw the dumplings on the ground, revealing his canine teeth. Don't be agitated, Yunhui hurriedly said. I mean to clear the relevant memories. Don't worry, our department has developed the relevant spells. It's guaranteed to be painless and effective in half an hour. Wait, you said this is your big brother? Is he also a Yao? Zhuefeng shook his head. My big brother is a human, but he's still my big brother. Yunhui was surprised, but Old Wolf frowned. A human, your big brother? Is there a problem? Zhuefeng stared at him with dissatisfaction. Old Wolf walked out. Yunhui wanted to stop him, but Old Wolf waved his hand. Yunhuizi, do you know why your performance can't go up? It's because you're so wishy-washy, and not straightforward at all. Didn't your mother teach you that if you meet a disobedient child, just beat him up until he's obedient? Yunhui opened his mouth, but he couldn't stop Old Wolf. In fact, in the administration bureau, this Old Wolf had stayed on for several times, and he was just a newcomer this year. Old Wolf, don't be impulsive. This is Consultant Long's territory after all. So what if he's a consultant? You didn't manage the demons in your territory well, so you don't need to follow the rules? Old Wolf snorted and walked directly to Mo Xiaofei and Zhuefeng. Old Wolf just glanced at Zhuefeng casually. He felt that this human had an extraordinary temperament, but he didn't care too much about him. Instead, he stared condescendingly at Zhuefeng and sneered, Hey, little brat. You're also from the Wolf clan, right? But I don't know why, but when I first saw you, I didn't like it. Zhuefeng had been following Mo Xiaofei, the good student, recently, so his character had been restrained a lot. But before that, strictly speaking, Zhuefeng came from a bad background. Now that he heard Old Wolf's words, how could he bear it? Zhuefeng directly raised his third finger at Old Wolf. Disobedient guys need to be disciplined. Old Wolf snorted at this time. Little brat, let me teach you how to respect the seniors who are stronger than you. After saying that, Old Wolf directly raised his fist. On his fist, demonic power was entwined, and a stream of air directly spiraled around Old Wolf's fist, causing a stream of air to suddenly blow up in the alley. Supernatural power, King Kong. At this time, the fist directly hit Zhuefeng's cheek. Only a loud bang was heard, but Old Wolf's face changed slightly. This punch didn't send this arrogant little brat flying as he expected. Zhuefeng was motionless at this time. He took Old Wolf's fist without even twisting his neck. TSK, I thought you were very powerful, Zhuefeng sneered at this time. This fist is so soft, far worse than Brother Xiaoxing's fist. You're so stubborn. I hope your body is as tough as mine. Old Wolf withdrew his fist at this time, but it was not to stop, but to hit a stronger fist. Old Wolf attacked, this time with both fists. Only a continuous banging sound was heard, but in the blink of an eye, Old Wolf's fist had hit Zhuefeng's body no less than 34 times. In fact, the Old Wolf's face was already showing some of the characteristics of the monster race. The Old Wolf was getting serious. At least Yunhui saw quite clearly that Old Wolf's attack was not 100%, but at least 70% to 80% of his ability. What is this little demon called Windchaser? Yunhui stared intently at the information in the database. Is this really harmless? After a long while, Old Wolf stopped, gasping for breath. In the end, he didn't hold back at all, but he still couldn't touch the kid. The kid's body was as hard as an alloy. No, even an alloy couldn't compare to it. Are you a freak? How did your parents give birth to you? Old Wolf frowned. Big brother, can I hit people? Zhuefeng lowered his head and suddenly asked in a low voice. Mo Xiaofei, who had been silent and seemed to be thinking about something, glanced at Zhuefeng in surprise, then nodded and said, Follow your heart. The fist skill I taught you is to follow your heart. If you have any concerns, you won't be able to exert its power. I understand. Zhuefeng took a deep breath, slowly raised his head, glanced at Old Wolf expressionlessly, and raised his fist at the same time. At this moment, A majestic demon power burst out from Xuefeng's body. Behind Xuefeng, the substantial demon power condensed into a huge shadow. The moment the shadow appeared, Old Wolf only felt the demon power in his body go berserk, as if it was out of his control. A tremor from the bottom of his heart made him lose his strength. He had an impulse to kneel. Old Wolf suddenly understood why he felt so uncomfortable when he saw this kid for the first time. It was because he was afraid of something, afraid of this kid, but he didn't want to admit it. "Don't talk about my parents, bastard!" When the fist struck out, there was no whistling sound, because the whistling sound came from the huge shadow behind Windchaser. Like a divine wolf, it howled to the sky. The moment the huge wolf shadow appeared, Emo Xiaofei's eyebrows twitched slightly. The emergence of this shadow actually shook his emperor's will. Old Wolf couldn't block this punch. His body couldn't move at all at this moment. Old Wolf instinctively felt that he couldn't block this punch, as if he saw death. Bang! Old Wolf subconsciously closed his eyes at this moment, but to his surprise, he didn't feel any pain. He opened his eyes, only to see Yun Hui standing in front of him. At the same time, a light wave covered Yun Hui and himself. The light wave turned into a shield, which was now full of cracks, and completely shattered in the next moment. At this moment, something cracked and fell from Yun Hui's hand. Old Wolf glanced at it. It was a palm-sized 8 trigrams mirror. This was a treasure given to him by Yun Hui's master. It was said that it was the best magic treasure refined by the 100 Tribulations Taoist, who lived the longest in the cultivation world. Chapter 10:20. The moment the magic treasure given by the sect broke, Yun Hui felt a heart-wrenching pain. But the current situation didn't allow Yun Hui to continue feeling heartache, because Xuefeng had already raised his fist for the second time. Such a powerful attack, yet he could make the second one without saying anything, and it seemed like he didn't even need to shake it forward. What kind of monster was he? In fact, Yun Hui didn't have much time to think, because after Xuefeng's second punch, Yun Hui had completely lost his consciousness. The second punch didn't directly hit Yun Hui or Old Wolf. It was just a punch through the air. However, the vibrations and pressure in the air instantly knocked them unconscious. Xuefeng exhaled slowly, maintaining his punching posture, but the shadow behind him dispersed little by little. "Why did you stop?" Emo Xiaofei asked Xuefeng curiously. Xuefeng scratched his head irritably. "I just don't like this kind of face, but it's not to the extent that I have to kill him. Besides, I don't want to bring trouble to everyone. Also, Big Brother wouldn't want to see me kill people. I hope you have good luck. If not, I hope you learn to be merciful in your misfortune. I hope you are loved by many people. If not, I hope you learn to be tolerant in your loneliness. I hope you grow up slowly." When the killing intent surged, Xuefeng didn't know why, but a low voice suddenly emerged from the bottom of his heart. That voice seemed to contain even his soul, and instantly erased the anger in his heart. "Really?" Emo Xiaofei nodded, but didn't say anything. He just felt that this little demon who seemed to know nothing and was full of wildness had some incredible gentleness. "Big Brother, what are you doing?" Emo Xiaofei didn't speak, but it didn't mean that he didn't take action. At this moment, he directly bent down, picked up the box that Yun Hui took out, and fiddled with it. Fingerprint unlock. Emo Xiaofei frowned and finally picked up Yun Hui's palm, pressing it on a position of the box. After that, the box projected an information interface. "Big Brother." Xuefeng walked up to him. Emo Xiaofei said indifferently, "No matter what, we need to know the attitude of the country towards demons and Taoists in this era. However, since these two fellows already know of this monarch's existence, even though this monarch's identity has not been exposed, however." Emo Xiaofei suddenly glanced at Xuefeng. Seeing that Xuefeng was looking at him in confusion, he pondered for a while and said, "Minister Xuefeng, can you find some rope?" When Gongsun Xiu arrived, Lai Kaixing stopped, and the sound of the zither came to an abrupt end. Gong Sun Shiu glanced at Lai Caixing's hands. They were white and flawless, like the hands of a newborn baby. They were extremely beautiful. Why don't you finish playing Snow in Spring? Lai Caixing's hands were still on the strings. He raised his head and looked at Gong Sun Shiu, smiling faintly. Winter is still here, the snow is not gone, how can there be spring? Gong Sun Shiu sat down and asked for Lai Caixing's zither. He placed it in front of him and continued playing the unfinished song. However, when Gong Sun Shiu was about to play the last part, the strings of the zither suddenly broke. His hands stopped there, and he couldn't help but frown. A broken string was a very unlucky thing for the player. Lai Caixing said slowly, I said, the snow is not gone, how can there be spring? Some things can't be forced. Gong Sun Shiu chuckled. As the future 72nd generation of Tianxin, don't you think it's a bit ironic for you to say that? Lai Caixing began to boil the tea carefully, while Gong Sun Shiu waited quietly. The two of them boiled the tea and drank it. Suddenly, some light snow floated in from outside the pavilion. Lai Caixing said, help me retrieve something. Retrieve? Gong Sun Shiu looked at the gray-haired man in surprise. If he said that he was retrieving something, did that mean that it was something that belonged to Lai Caixing and had been stolen or loaned out but couldn't be returned? It's something that needs to be used during the final sacrifice of the conference. Lai Caixing said slowly, a few days ago, a friend gave it to me, but it was stolen midway. I would like to meet the person who stole something from you. Gong Sun Shiu smiled. Lai Caixing took out a piece of paper and handed it to Gong Sun Shiu. This is the approximate location of the person. It is said that she is a white-haired lady. It should be easy to recognize her. But Gong Sun Shiu frowned. Approximate location? That doesn't sound like the answer you gave. Lai Caixing shook his head. Recently, the area around Mount Tai is completely chaotic. It's like a pool of muddy water. No one can see how many fish are swimming in the pool. For example, didn't you come? Since it's something that needs to be used during the sacrifice, there's no other way. Gong Sun Shiu put away the piece of paper and stood up, leaving the pavilion at the center of the pool. Seeing that he had left, Lai Caixing rubbed his hands and breathed out warm air. It's so cold. The checkup didn't take long for Song Ying and Zhang Qingrui. The two of them walked out of the hospital named Renai very quickly. There was nothing wrong with their bodies, but the most important blood test report couldn't be obtained that day. After all, the medical equipment here was not advanced. But the two of them were obviously relieved. At least the doctor who knew how to feel the pulse said that the pulse was normal. Let's eat something? Song Ying bought 2 sets of Chinese crepes in the alley. The two of them sat in a small park not far from the hospital and ate. Zhang Qingrui originally thought that they could have dinner when they went back. It was somewhat inappropriate to eat now. But Song Ying felt that Zhang Qingrui was too rigid. A girl's afternoon tea is digested in another stomach. Don't be afraid. Zhang Qingrui didn't believe her words. But she didn't eat Chinese crepes often. I heard from Grandpa that he has some cooperation with your Zhang family this time. Song Ying suddenly asked, do you know the specific time? Zhang Qingrui thought for a while. According to my grandmother, it should start after the first day of the new year. Song Ying chewed and said, developing tombs. I always feel that this kind of thing is far away from me. Zhang Qingrui curiously said, I heard that the Song family has received many different commissions. I also heard from my grandmother that the two families have a lot of cooperation before. Song Ying shook her head. I don't care about this field. It's basically my grandpa or uncle who is in charge of it. In the past 4 or 5 years, the work of exploring and developing ruins had almost been handed over to his uncle. I just manage the internal affairs of the group. What about you? Do you often go to those places? Zhang Qingrui put down her hands, looking at the street outside the park, looking a bit nervous. No, it's the first time. Song Ying looked at Zhang Qingrui with surprise. Zhang Qingrui said in a low voice, My grandmother said that it's also the family business of the Li family. Now I'm the only descendant of the two families. Even if I don't manage this field in the future, as a descendant of the Li family, I should at least have some relevant experience. My grandmother said that our ancestors have a great obsession with developing Qin Shi Huang's mausoleum. Well, it's probably the dream of a similar industry. And this is the main reason why we agreed to cooperate with Japan this time. After all, it's a rare opportunity. Song Ying curiously asked, but after all, it's your country's heritage site. Is it really okay to cooperate with foreigners? Zhang Qingrui said helplessly, we have no choice, right? They have the map of the entrance. Even if we refuse to cooperate, they can still find other families. As long as the mausoleum is developed, it's bound to be damaged. It's better to do it ourselves than let other families do it. At least we'll consciously choose to protect it. However, he had heard some gossip about whether this family would return some precious cultural relics to the country in different ways. It's not easy for you either. Song Ying sighed. She almost had to shoulder half of the group by herself. As for Zhang Qingrui, she had to take care of two families. She also lost her parents when she was young. Song Ying suddenly felt that they knew each other. Zhang Qingrui, how about? Song Ying subconsciously wanted to say something. That person is. But Zhang Qingrui said something almost at the same time. She was still looking at the street outside the park. That person. Song Ying looked at the direction Zhang Qingrui was talking about. What she saw was the back of a tall woman in casual clothes. She had long blonde hair, and the way she walked reminded Song Ying of the etiquette teacher she had studied in a noble girls' school when she was young. What a perfect back! What's wrong with her? Song Ying asked curiously. Zhang Qingrui seemed to be absent-minded. Zhang Qingrui opened her mouth and looked at Song Ying with uncertainty. I think she's Luoqiu's girlfriend. Oh. Song Ying nodded. Then she blinked and stood up abruptly. What did you say? Don't get excited. Zhang Qingrui shrunk her neck. I've only seen her once. Maybe I mistook her for someone else. Although that was the case, how could such a perfect person be so easily forgotten and mistaken after meeting him once? Song Ying grabbed Zhang Qingrui's hand and pulled her up. Wait, what are we going to do? Do you still need to ask? Of course we're going to catch up with her. Song Ying said matter-of-factly. We're going to see who she is. Spy on the enemy. Bah. I'm a member of the Song family, so I have to know who she is going to be marrying into the Song family in the future. I won't let an indecent woman marry into the family. What a far-fetched reason, but it seemed that even she wanted to have a look. So the two figures quietly rushed out of the park and looked around. Finally, they saw the back of the blonde woman again. She was sneaking around. Onions, chives, and dough. The shop auntie enthusiastically packed the goods and sent them to a blonde woman in front of the counter, a foreigner. Although it was a small place because it was also a national tourist area, there was no lack of opportunities to see foreigners here. Of course, such a beautiful foreigner could only be seen in movies and posters. Thank you very much. You're too polite. The shop assistant smiled. As a woman, she was very pleased with the girl's politeness. Also, this girl's Chinese was very standard. Did she grow up in China? Are you planning to make dumplings? The shop assistant began to gossip. After all, there were few opportunities to talk with foreigners, and such a beautiful woman, she could boast for 3 days. Yes, I'm going to try. You've never done it before? The shop assistant asked curiously. The blonde woman smiled. I know how to do it, but I don't do it often. It should be my first time doing it officially. The shop assistant suddenly narrowed her eyes, revealing an ambiguous smile. Are you making it for your boyfriend? The blonde girl smiled. Why do you say so? The shop assistant said shrewdly, because of the weight. If you're making it for your family, the weight is too little. It's only enough for 1 or 2 people, a couple? When faced with this question, The blonde girl only smiled slightly, nodded elegantly, and then left the auntie's sight. The shop assistant blinked her eyes after the blonde woman left, then looked around in confusion. Where is she? When did she leave? Although she said so, the shop assistant soon saw two beautiful women hurriedly passing by. But these two women looked a bit sneaky. Where is she? Song Ying's eyes widened. She had never learned how to follow someone, but she had learned a thing or two from what she had seen and heard. Unfortunately, she had lost track of the person she had been following. She should be walking this way, but I can't see her. Zhang Qingrui shook her head. Although they said they followed her, they didn't take the initiative to ask anything, but just followed her for a short distance. I don't believe it. Song Ying frowned. However, the moment he turned around, he stepped on something and slipped. Then, he lost his balance and fell to the ground. Her buttocks sat on the hard ground, and Song Ying cried out in pain. It turned out to be ice formed by the snow on the roadside. Are you all right? Zhang Qingrui hurriedly helped her up. What do you think? Song Ying frowned, only feeling the pain in her buttocks. It seemed a bit difficult for her to walk. Or, let's go back first. Zhang Qingrui had to say, maybe I saw it wrong. Besides, if it's true, Luoqiu can't do nothing. Help me. Song Ying sighed. And you drive later? Zhang Qingrui couldn't help laughing, but supported Song Ying, walking step by step to the parking place. At this moment, on the rooftop of a nearby 7-story residential building, a pair of deep blue eyes watched the two of them leave. The cold wind lifted her hair. Chapter 10:21. What made Yun Hui and Old Wolf feel troubled was that no matter what they did, they could not escape from their current situation. The location was unknown, the time was unknown, but it was probably already nighttime. Moreover, from the silence of the surroundings, no one would pass by in a short period of time. This place looked like a place that had been abandoned for a long time. Both Yun Hui and the Old Wolf had no idea how long they had been unconscious for. Without a doubt, they were imprisoned or tied up with hemp rope and placed in this place. No, my magic power is like a stone sinking into the sea. It seems to be restrained by something. Yun Hui sighed. The first thing to do was to check his body in such a situation. But the result of the check was really despairing. He glanced at Old Wolf beside him and realized that Old Wolf's complexion was worse than his. Old Wolf's condition was probably no better than his. But since he woke up, Old Wolf had been silent. No one knew what he was thinking about. Yun Hui began to look around, looking for a possible way out. But in fact, both he and Old Wolf had their powers restrained and were tied up tightly with rope. All the communication devices on them had disappeared. Not only that, both of them were stripped naked, leaving only a pair of underwear. What on earth is it? Old Wolf suddenly muttered. Old Wolf? Yun Hui frowned. Old Wolf shook his head and said, the other party probably did not intend to kill us. Otherwise, they would not have just trapped us here. Yun Hui nodded. They probably did not want to expose their whereabouts? After all of his and Old Wolf's means of communication had been taken away, and it was not difficult to deduce that they were simply trapped in this place. Could it be related to the missing persons case in the Demon Association? Yun Hui frowned. In fact, ever since he and Old Wolf discovered that a member of the White Tiger clan had been killed, there had been more missing persons cases in the two major associations in Mount Tai in less than 24 hours. If we can't escape, I'm afraid we will be on the missing persons list, right? The Old Wolf laughed at himself. I was actually defeated by a 60-year-old little demon. It seems that I've really fallen to the bottom of the pit. Yun Hui opened his mouth. He had secretly read some of Old Wolf's information. It seemed that the Old Wolf, who was still in the Greedy Wolf clan before he served, was once the bravest in the clan. Generally speaking, although the demon race would send out qualified people to serve, they would usually not send out the pillars of the clan. At the very least, he's still alive. Also, if we don't return to the team, the agency will realize something. Yunhui comforted him. No matter what, let's fill our stomachs first. Yunhui looked at the bag on the ground. It was obviously filled with food, but it was already cold. The old wolf frowned. The key was not whether to eat, but how to eat. Their hands and feet were tied behind their backs, and the only part of their body that could move normally was probably the area above their neck. Speaking of which, tonight is New Year's Eve. Yunhui had the urge to curse. This was probably the most special New Year's Eve ever. Momo was making some temporary charms that could be used. The materials were the best in the market. When he finished the last charm, Momo stretched his body. He casually glanced at Jean-Eyre, who was still unconscious on the bed. Even if Jean-Eyre didn't wake up in 1 or 2 more days, they would have to set off. Although it was rather conspicuous to bring an unconscious person along and it was easier to be exposed, there was still the danger of being discovered if they stayed in this place for a long time. There were all kinds of experts in the Tao Demon Association. Momo opened the window of the room to let the cold wind in. He wanted to sober himself up. There were almost no pedestrians on the street. It seemed rather desolate. Everyone should have returned home for a reunion. At this moment, Momo muttered, seeming to be absent-minded. He suddenly felt very sleepy, even his eyelids became heavy. Even his body was on the verge of collapsing. At this moment, his hands suddenly pressed against the windowsill, stabilizing his body that was about to fall. Then, Momo raised his head with a solemn face. His lips had been bitten by himself at this moment. This kind of tiredness wasn't because he was too tired, but because of the influence of the outside world. Momo's tiredness had mostly disappeared when he bit his lips. At this time, a strange sound came from downstairs. It sounded like the sound of someone falling to the ground. Momo swiftly grabbed the black wooden sword leaning against the corner of the wall, jumping out of the window. He landed in the small courtyard of the hotel. The first floor of the hotel was the place where the landlady and her family lived. Momo saw that the landlady and her family had all fallen down at the dining table. Did they just fall asleep? Momo checked the status of the landlady and her family one by one. He couldn't help feeling the strangeness of the matter. Not only this hotel, even the people in the 2 neighboring hotels had all fallen asleep. Momo didn't dare to go too far. After checking the situation of the 2 nearby hotels, he rushed back to the place where he lived and took Jean-Eyre away from here. He quickly settled Jean-Eyre in another guesthouse not far away. Of course, he chose an empty house that no one lived in. Summon. After stacking 5 charms in his hand, a very strange black cat emerged from the floor of the room. You stay here and guard. If anything happens, inform me at once. Momo ordered the summoned civet. Then, he quickly walked down the street. He walked past one house after another and realized that all the ordinary people on the way had fallen into a coma. At this moment, a loud sound came from afar. It was about 7 or 8 o'clock in the evening. Although the street was well lit, there were few pedestrians. A strangely dressed girl with short white hair was sitting alone on a stool at the bus stop, eating a hamburger and a soda. At this time, Nero crumpled the remaining wrapping paper into a ball, and then threw it toward the trash can not far away. It was a perfect parabola. If there were no accidents, the paper ball should enter the trash can smoothly. However, a sudden gust of wind caused the paper ball's trajectory to deviate. In the end, the paper ball landed beside the trash can. What? Nero blinked, then she looked in the direction of the wind. On the town road ahead, there was a thick fog spreading. Nero took the soda from the stool, taking 2 quick sips before putting down the cup with only ice cube. Then, she carried the painting tube and walked towards the dense fog. 1 or 2 passers-by could be seen in the fog, but they all fell on the ground. Those who were still breathing seemed to have just fallen asleep. In the dense fog, Nero saw a flickering light. When she got closer, she found that it was the danger signal light on a black car. It seemed to be deliberately turned on to attract her. And in front of this black MPV, There was a man with a pretty good appearance standing at this time. There seemed to be someone else in the car. Nero stopped 3 meters away from the man outside. She didn't intend to say anything, just watching while chewing bubble gum. At this moment, the other party said indifferently, "White hair, strange attire. You are the one who stole from Wulong Mountain Villa, right?" "Little brother, I don't know what Wulong Mountain Villa is." Nero smiled slightly. The young man said expressionlessly, "I don't want to do anything unnecessary. As long as you give me the small brocade box, you can leave safely." Nero narrowed her eyes at this time, looking at the fog around her. At the same time, she looked at a passer-by who had fainted in the distance. She suddenly said with a playful smile, "Oh, you don't want to do anything unnecessary?" The young man said indifferently, "This is necessary. In addition, miss, you don't seem to be the type that can be communicated with advice. Then, there is no other way." Nero shrugged and was about to say something, but her eyes suddenly shrank at this moment. A figure who had appeared in front of her in an instant. His palm swept across as if he was waving a saber, and this saber was mercilessly sweeping towards her neck. This speed, Nero's body leaned back in an instant, and the opponent's saber hand swept past Nero's neck. But the airflow cut Nero's collar a little at this time. It was a cut so smooth that it looked like it had been cut by a sharp utility knife. After Nero's legs jumped on the ground easily a few times, she had already opened a distance of about 7 or 8 meters from the mysterious young man. Phew, that was close. Nero chuckled at this time. My head almost fell off. Little brother, you seem to have a strong smell of blood on you. You're not bad either. The young man retracted his palm, took off his suit jacket, and pinched up the sleeves of his white shirt. Little brother, are you going to be serious? After all, I don't want to drag on for too long. Battle soul, attached. After a very indifferent voice, a white flame rose from the young man's body, wrapping his whole body. But this was definitely not a flame that could burn, but a collection similar to thoughts. The painting tube behind him suddenly vibrated slightly. The thing in the painting tube was conveying a thirsty desire to Nero at this time. But at this moment, there was no time for Nero to be distracted. The young man bathed in white flames once again rushed into the range that Nero could hardly defend with a super high speed. This time, the speed was far faster than the last time. The young man's hand chopped at Nero 7 times in an instant. 7 visible half-moon cyclones shot out from Nero's body at this moment. They flew directly to more than 10 meters behind Nero. The half-moon-like cyclones cut a car parked on the street into a large number of parts in an instant. Nero lowered her head at this moment, but she didn't know if it was appropriate to hold the painting tube behind her in front of her. There was a bleeding wound on each of her arms at this time. The painting tube was almost shattered. Nero raised her head at this time. A strange color flashed in her pupils, but she still chuckled. "Little brother, you are really not polite at all." But the young man just rolled his eyes. Seeing that the first attack did not achieve the expected effect, he raised his hand again without saying a word. "Then I won't be polite." A cold light flashed in front of him. The young man's rigid face had a trace of movement at this moment. Nero jumped up directly at this time, holding a long blade with strange flowing light in her hand. Air cut. Holding the handle of Yamato with both hands, Nero chopped at the young man from top to bottom with wisps of smoke-like black gas emitted from the blade. Boom! Like a huge hammer falling down, a huge pit appeared on the road in an instant. However, this sudden attack did not hit the mysterious young man, and Nero didn't care about it. After landing, she stretched out her left hand towards the young man. Yamato was placed close to her left arm, and the tip of the blade entered the web between the thumb and the index finger of her left hand. At the same time, she was in a charging posture. Nero's eyes became more strange at this moment, and she seemed to be happy at this moment. Dragon Tooth. The speed of this sudden stab was extremely fast, but it did not exceed the reaction ability of this young man. However, at this moment, He had a feeling of stagnation, as if his body was being locked by something, and for a moment, his 4 limbs were unable to move very well. However, in this kind of battle, not to mention a moment, even a moment was enough to kill. I underestimated this woman. The young man felt a chill in his heart, and the white flame on his body instantly gathered in front of him, turning into a round shield. The blade of Yamato directly pierced the white round shield at this time. In an instant, the young man's body flew backward as if he was hit by a truck, and finally smashed into the front of the black MPV. The windshield of the MPV was directly smashed into pieces. Nero waved Yamato casually, and then put her palm on her eyebrows. She stood on tiptoe and made a posture of looking into the distance. "Little brother, are you okay? Hello? Little brother, can you still hear me?" At this moment, the young man pressed his hands on the hood of the MPV, propping himself up. Although he looked a little embarrassed, his face was normal. Obviously, he didn't suffer much damage, or rather, it was not painful at all. "Shursui, you're too slow." However, at this moment, such a cold voice suddenly came from within the carriage. "Shursui." Gongsun Shursui came down from the car, and swept the glass shards off his body, saying indifferently, "This woman is not weak. Even in the Qian division, she is qualified to compete for the Golden Sword General." "That means you're not qualified to be the Golden Sword General?" The voice came again from the car. 5 minutes. Gongsun Shursui chuckled. "Too many." Chapter 10:22. It was a very violent way of slashing each other, because the real battle wasn't a turn-based system. The sound of swords clashing was endless, but the only thing left in the air were the sparks left after the weapons clashed. This was a speed that was completely beyond what an ordinary human's dynamic vision could capture. With the MPV as the center, there were destroyed things around the street. There were many cracks and holes on the road. If this wasn't a small town, and if it wasn't a special day, and there weren't any cars on the street, this level of destruction would have made the outside world a mess. Of course, the thick fog also played a part in this. The person sitting in the MPV was Gongsun Xiu. With his eyes closed, he could hear the battle between Gongsun Jishui and the white-haired woman, and 3 minutes had passed. The battle between the two was so close that it was hard to tell who would win. This was out of Gongsun Xiu's expectation. Shursui was one of the best in the Qian division, even among the Golden Sword warriors. There was no doubt about his strength. Even when he was facing Shinryu, he wasn't as weak as he looked. Because he knew Gongsun Jishui's strength, Gongsun Xiu had a special feeling about this white-haired woman. Strictly speaking, the Gongsun clan had already broken away from the concept of ordinary people. Even though they were still human, the power they had was already inhuman. This wasn't a martial art passed down from Kelowna, but there were some traces of ancient Korean sword skills. In addition, their fighting style was more inclined to the gentleness of Japanese sword skills and Western sword skills. Their physical strength is obviously much weaker than Shursui's. Their fighting skills should be developed through killing. Their sense of touch is very sharp. Gongsun Xiu rolled down the window and looked at the golden sparks bursting out in the air. Is it that strange knife? It wasn't impossible. Powerful weapons contained great power and could give the user extraordinary power. The best among them was Kelowna's Xianyuan sword. As an atavist, Gongsun Xiu was qualified to use part of Kelowna's Xianyuan sword. He knew very well what level he could reach with the help of the divine weapon. 4 minutes and 30 seconds. The two sides suddenly stopped fighting. Gongsun Jishui glanced at his arm that was holding the sword. There was a wound about the size of a palm on his sleeve. As for Nero, who was not far away, there was an additional wound on her body. On her left cheek there was a finger-long bright red. This little brother, the 5 minutes are almost up. Don't you want to continue? Nero whistled. I'm sorry, I underestimated you. Gongsun Jishui was silent for a moment before he slowly raised the strange weapon in his hand again. Next, I will do my best. I look forward to it. Nero happily assumed a fighting posture again. But at that moment, Gongsun Shiyu suddenly said, "That's enough." At the same time, Gongsun Shiyu's arm reached out from the car window, and an extremely sharp sword chi shot out. The sword energy emitted a terrifying light that swept past Gongsun Jishui. This was a light that could cut through everything. At the moment when the sword light arrived, Nero subconsciously waved the Yama in her hand to block it, but she was too slow. Her pupils dilated a little. The sword light instantly cut through her body, and her arm fell to the ground easily. After cutting off Nero's right arm that was holding the sword light flew a few meters away and directly cut through a private car parked by the roadside before gradually dissipating. Clang! The Yama fell to the ground with a crisp sound. Blood spurted out from Nero's broken arm. At the same time, Nero directly spat out a mouthful of pus. It didn't cut off her right arm, but the impact of the sword light even damaged her internal organs. "Sure enough, your strength comes from this strange sword." Gongsun Shiyu opened the car door and slowly walked out. "Without the support of this sword, your body is just a little stronger than ordinary people." Nero grasped the wound on her broken arm, and her scattered hair covered half of her cheek. Gongsun Jishui glanced at the private car that was cut open in the distance. There seemed to be someone in the car. But he just frowned and didn't say anything. He directly dispersed the ancient sword flickering with lightning in his hand, and then stood behind Gongsun Shiyu. "This sword is good, I'm a little interested," Gongsun Shiyu said indifferently. "If you give me the thing you stole, I can let you go. As for the arm, as long as you leave immediately, there's still a chance to reattach it. Of course, whether you can use it normally or not depends on your luck. Take this as your punishment for stealing my things." "That's the tone of a winner that makes me angry." Nero lowered her head and said indifferently, "But it can't be helped. After all, I'm the one who lost. As the loser, I have no right to refute." "Oh." Gongsun Shiyu glanced at her. "It seems that you're very used to the rule that losing means losing everything. About this much?" Nero stretched out her blood-stained palm, drawing a little distance between her index finger and thumb. But her face was pale, and her lips were dyed red with blood. Blood was still flowing out from her broken arm. The amount of blood loss in this short period was too much. "Personality defect." Gongsun Shiyu frowned and then said indifferently, "Give me the thing. It's just a waste of your time." However, Nero spat out another mouthful of blood at this moment. Her entire body bent as a result, and she knelt on the ground. Her expression was extremely painful. The degree of pain even made a lot of blue veins appear on her face. Nero's pupils seemed to become a little gray at this moment. She struggled to take something out from the inner pocket of her clothes. It was a flat box, but her body seemed to be out of control at this moment. She didn't hold the box firmly in her hand, but it fell. In the flat box, a lot of capsules scattered. Nero subconsciously reached out to grab it. However, at that moment, Gongsun Shiyu also extended his hand and grabbed at the air. An invisible force instantly sent those capsules into his hand. Nero grabbed nothing, and her face turned pale. She looked up, and the figures of Gongsun Shiyu and Gongsun Shishui in front of her had become blurred. In a flash, Nero directly fell to the ground, her body twitching non-stop. "Maybe it's some kind of strange disease?" Gongsun Shishui frowned. Gongsun Shiyu glanced at the capsules in his hand and said, "You go and take the thing and the person. I'm interested in the origin of this sword." Gongsun Shishui nodded, walking toward Nero who was lying on the ground. Unexpectedly, when he was about to reach Nero's side, something seemed to pounce on him from the left and right. Gongsun Jishui furrowed his brows as he saw two strange black dogs pouncing at him. The eyes of the black dogs were glowing with a green light, which made them look a bit creepy. The two black dogs bit Gongsun Shishui's legs from the left and right, hindering his movement. Gongsun Jishui coldly snorted. White flames flashed from his body, and the two black dogs were instantly driven away. They shot out but disappeared in the air, and were replaced by 2 cracked talismans. At the same time, a young man with golden hair and a black wooden sword appeared beside Nero. Momo. Are you this woman's partner? Gongsun Shishui frowned again. Judging from this technique, he seemed to be a descendant of the Yin-Yang sect. But there were several sects in Kelowna that were good at using the Yin-Yang ghost god force, so he couldn't recognize this young man. We're not companions. We've only met once. Momo glanced at the distracted Nero and frowned. This dangerous girl was still eating with him in the restaurant 1 day ago. Met once. Gongsun Shishui seemed to be analyzing the credibility of this sentence. You saved her. Do you have a sense of justice? Speaking of justice, this woman's hands were also covered in blood. Perhaps she deserved to die. But, Momo shook his head, but you don't seem to be any better. Do you know where we come from? Gongsun Shishui asked indifferently. Momo said with a gloomy face, I don't care where you come from. I just know that you don't show any mercy to innocent passers-by. The one behind you just sent that family of 3 away with a sword chi. Don't you know that? Do you know? They might be on their way home right now. There might be an elderly person at home, and the elderly person might be waiting for them to return for a reunion dinner. This 1 year of waiting, this life, are you going to erase it just like that? It's just some consumables that don't even have the right to reincarnate. Gongsun Shiu said indifferently, This woman stole our stuff, I'm just taking it back. Don't meddle in other people's business. Shishui, send him away. Gongsun Shishui nodded. With a flip of his hand, a long sword flickering with lightning slowly emerged from his palm. Lightning is the nemesis of the Tao of Yin and Yang ghosts and gods. You should leave this dangerous place as soon as possible. Huge pressure, even Nero, who was already dead, had given Momo a great scare. But this man in front of him had the power to tie with Nero. As for the man behind him, he even injured Nero to the brink of death with a sword chi. Momo's forehead and the back of his neck oozed with cold sweat. Indeed, he shouldn't be involved in this matter, but his body had already started to move before he could think rationally. Especially when he saw the sword light directly cut the private car, and saw the flesh and blood of the family of 3 in the private car being separated. That was what he saw in the instant when he followed the sound in the thick fog. It seems that you don't want to give in, then there's no other way. Gongsun Shishui slowly waved the ancient sword in his hand. Then let's talk with our power. I can't win, even the hope of escaping seems to be quite slim. But even so, Momo still gritted his teeth, holding the black wooden sword with both hands against the huge pressure. His whole body was surging with spiritual power, confronting Gongsun Shishui. A sword pierced towards him. The unparalleled killing intent made Momo's hands stiff. He recalled that he had never fought with anyone like this before or when he cultivated on the mountain. The only time he fought with the young master of White Tiger, Huang Baifu, was also an experiment at the beginning. So this is the feeling of facing life and death. Facing the real god of death, I can't even withstand a single blow. Momo bit the tip of his tongue with difficulty, waving his arm with difficulty, blocking Gongsun Shishui's sword with his wooden sword. But Gongsun Shishui's second sword strike followed. I can't block it. I can only dodge it. Momo had the thought of retreating. But at this moment, Gongsun Shishui suddenly withdrew his sword, not only stopping the attack, but also leaped backwards to distance himself from Momo. Gongsun Shishui's face was solemn, suddenly asking in a low voice, Who are you? You're talking to me. No, behind me. Momo abruptly turned around. The most beautiful face he had ever seen was standing behind him. Gorgeous black and white maid clothes, always calm and tranquil smile. Miss Maid in the senior's shop. You are. Why are you? Momo was shocked, speechless. Nice to meet you again, Mr. Momo. Miss Maid smiled. Could you please step aside? Momo gave a start and then realized something. He hurriedly moved away. Yu Yi nodded with a smile as if to thank him. Then she walked past Momo and came to Nero's side. Unknowingly, Nero was already holding a black card in her hand. Her lips moved slightly as she said something intermittently. Kill them or take me away safely, choose one. There's money in the box. Take as much as you need. If it's not enough, you can take mine. The black card holder's request had to be fulfilled. Miss Maid couldn't refuse such a request as the store manager. I see, dear customer. Miss Maid nodded slowly, and then waved her hand to stop the bleeding from Nero's broken hand. She then turned to Gongsun Shui and Gongsun Xiu, saying indifferently, Gentlemen, for some reason, I need to take this lady away, is that okay? If you can solve this peacefully, I'll be very grateful. It seems that there are a lot of uninvited guests around Mount Tai these days. Gongsun Shui waved his ancient sword. But, I have an order, I need to take this woman away. I don't care about your so-called reason. I understand the situation. Miss Maid smiled faintly. I'm in a bad mood today, just take it as a small release. Under this devastatingly beautiful smile, an earth-shattering terror instantly descended on the road. Chapter 10:23. In an instant, Gongsun Jishui's heart beat wildly. He couldn't remember how many years it had been since he last experienced this feeling. When was the last time he felt such unbearable fear? Was it the first time he stepped on the arena of the Golden Sword Warrior? Or was it the first time he entered the battlefield of Xianyuan Palace and faced an invincible enemy? The memory uncontrollably disturbed Gongsun Jishui's will. However, when he woke up in the next second, the beautiful woman in front of him was already holding a burning black cross sword. Her gorgeous dress fluttered in the wind as she moved. Her speed was not particularly fast, but Gongsun Jishui was still able to use the ancient sword in his hand to block when he came back to his senses from his daze. He blocked it. To Gongsun Jishui's surprise, he easily blocked the woman's attack. Judging from the impact of the ancient sword, it was still within the range that he could withstand, even though the web between his thumb and forefinger was slightly numb. However, before Gongsun Jishui had time to think about his next move, an unexpected impact suddenly came from his wrist. At the same time, an unbearable violent force came from the blade. After the contact, there was a second power erupting. The ancient sword was directly knocked out of Gongsun Jishui's hand, and his arm was pulled to the side because he couldn't hold the ancient sword tightly. In a split second, the beautiful woman in front of him suddenly lowered her body, and the Blackfire Cross sword changed its angle and swept in front of Gongsun Jishui. This was her speed. Gongsun Jishui's pupils rapidly dilated at this moment. The fear that if he couldn't block this attack, his body might be directly cut in half spread wildly in his mind. Chi! At the moment of death, the white flame on Gongsun Jishui's body was instantly compressed in front of him, and Yu Ye's cross sword swept in front of Gongsun Jishui. The friction on the ground seemed to have been somewhat eliminated, and Gongsun Jishui's body frantically retreated at this moment. His legs left a trail of over 10 meters long on the concrete road. Gongsun Jishui finally stopped. The white flames on his body had completely disappeared. He lowered his head, keeping his hands crossed in front of him. Then, Gongsun Jishui's eyes drooped down and he slowly raised his head. But the moment he raised his head, he spat out a mouthful of blood. Sure Sui. Gongsun Xiu's expression changed. Gongsun Jishui said in a trembling voice, Quick, run. Once again. He spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground. A wisp of white smoke rose from Gongsun Jishui's body and disappeared into the air. That was a battle soul passed down from generation to generation in the Gongsun family. It was a treasure left by the warriors who fought alongside the Yellow Emperor in the distant era. Only the warrior who earned the title of Golden Sword could obtain it. However, such a precious battle soul was gone at this moment. After blocking that attack, Yi Zichen was stunned. I'm really sorry. Although I've been careful, I still overestimated the strength of this intent. It was Miss Servant Girl's apologetic voice. At this moment, Gong Sun Shiu suddenly looked at Miss Maid, looking at the horror behind the smile. He looked at her approvingly and remained silent. Miss Servant Girl didn't disperse the black flame cross sword in her hand, but asked in a low voice, "Sir, can I take him away now?" Gong Sun Shiu said blandly, "You've killed a precious battle soul of our Gong Sun family. How can you leave without leaving anything behind?" Miss Servant Girl slightly opened her eyes, suddenly becoming indifferent. Then, "Do I need to erase it from your body? Arrogant!" Gong Sun Shiu suddenly became furious. A white flame surged crazily on his body, which was much more powerful than Gong Sun Jishui's. His palm suddenly sucked the ground, and a sword shadow with golden brilliance slowly emerged from the ground. Rings of golden light rippled out like waves from the center, spreading out in all directions. A huge airflow spread out in all directions. Facing this airflow, Momo felt like his body was about to be overturned, such a huge amount of qi. At this moment, Momo finally understood the origin of these two men. They didn't cultivate Tao, but ancient martial arts. Momo once heard from his master that the ancient warriors controlled the qi in their body with a special power called Zhenli. The strong ones were not much weaker than Tao technique. Profound warriors could really break the earth, surpassing the limits of the human body. It was just qi, but it was so hard to resist. Under the disordered airflow, Momo could only lean forward to stabilize his body, just like a pedestrian moving forward in a hurricane. Under this huge airflow, Miss Maid still stood in the same place. Only her long blonde hair was blown behind her back by the airflow, and her maid's skirt was fluttering in the wind. Finally, Gong Sun Shiu held the golden long sword in his hand. And this sword was Kelowna Xianyuan's sword. As a member of the Gong Sun family, Gong Sun Shiu inherited part of the Xianyuan royal bloodline due to atavism and inherited part of the Yellow Emperor's sword. He was also qualified to wield part of the Yellow Emperor's sword. Although he couldn't summon the complete Kelowna Xianyuan sword, and what he held in his hand was only a shadow of Kelowna Xianyuan sword. But it was enough. This was the unparalleled power that could suppress all demons and monsters in the world. At this moment, the rising waves mixed with the golden brilliance extinguished the black flames around Miss Servant Girl in an instant. Gong Sun Shiu came with the sword, and his figure disappeared in a flash, leaving only a wisp of smoke. Ding! 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 Numerous sounds of symphony resounded in the air. Miss Servant Girl's arm, that was holding the black flame cross, was waving at a speed beyond the limit of human body. Only the arm that was holding the sword was waving. That's a pretty good sword technique. It was the first time for him to see an outsider who could block his sword so easily. After hundreds of attacks, Gong Sun Shiu calmly stopped attacking. Although this was not the fastest speed he could bring out, in reality, he had already become serious, but he still let the other party easily receive all of his attacks. Miss Servant Girl's swordsmanship doesn't look like Kelowna's style. Gong Sun Shiu said slowly, "Although we haven't fought for a long time, I think we can have a fair talk." "My swordsmanship style?" Yu Yi shook her head. "It's not swordsmanship. It's just waving and blocking after reaction." "Blocking after reaction?" Gong Sun Shiu suddenly chuckled, but there was a trace of coldness in his eyes. "Miss Servant Girl, I'm sorry that I can't make you use your swordsmanship. I have to work harder from now on." Miss Servant Girl suddenly said, "Can you still summon this kind of lightsaber? If not, there's no need to continue the fight." "What?" Gong Sun Shiu was startled, subconsciously looking at the shadow of Kelowna Xianyuan family's sword in his hand. The sound of something shattering resounded in Gong Sun Shiu's ears. At the same time, a crack suddenly appeared on the flawless golden blade. Like a domino effect, the moment the crack appeared, it immediately spread in all directions. In the blink of an eye, the crack had already covered the entire blade. Crack! In a flash, it broke from Gong Sun Shishui's hand, turning into pieces of golden fragments, scattering on the ground and then disappearing. Kelowna Xianyuan's sword was actually, although it was only the shadow of the original body, but when did it happen? Was it corroded when it clashed with the black flame cross sword? Was it because of the black flame? Gong Sun Shiu looked at the woman in maid costume in shock. At the same time, Yu Yi suddenly waved the black flame cross sword in her hand. This action was like a burning fuse that ignited Gong Sun Shiu's instincts. Faced with the servant girl's waving wrist, Gong Sun Shiu's entire body tensed up in an instant. He kept retreating, and at the same time, his hands formed a strange seal. The white flames rising from his body instantly gathered in front of him, turning into a huge shield. But to Gong Sun Shiu's surprise, the opponent didn't attack. Instead, she dispersed the black flame cross sword in her hand. Seems like there's no need to continue. Excuse me, can I leave now? Gong Sun Shiu instantly opened his eyes. He felt like he was fooled. Feeling that his instinct had recovered, Gong Sun Shui coughed a few times in pain, and then got up. His position didn't seem to have changed. Shiu? Gong Sun Shui clutched his chest, feeling difficulty in breathing, and tried his best to walk toward Gong Sun Shiu. Gong Sun Shiu was just standing. But to Gong Sun Shui's relief, Gong Sun Shiu wasn't injured. Where's that woman? What happened? But soon Gong Sun Shui felt that something was wrong. The white-haired thief was gone, and so was that young man who tried to stand up for him, and finally, that terrifying blonde woman. I lost. What? Gong Sun Shui froze. Even though I used Xianyuan's sword light, I still lost. Gong Sun Shiu's voice became fainter and fainter. I even touched the corner of her clothes, Shiu. Gong Sun Shui wanted to say something, but he stopped on second thought. But Gong Sun Shiu suddenly raised his head and laughed wildly, and his laughter contained raging fury. F***ck, I lost? Ha 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 ha. The laughter stopped abruptly, and Gong Sun Shiu's voice suddenly turned cold as he turned around and left. Let's go. It was still the same place where he could completely relax, in Senior's shop. Just call me Yu Yi, Mr. Momo. The servant girl in front of him introduced herself in this way. She seemed to be in a good mood after coming back, and seemed to be easy to talk to, which was totally different from the terrifying look she had when she fought against the two powerful warriors. Nero was placed on the sofa in the lobby by Yu Yi. Her broken arm was placed on the table in front of the sofa, along with that strange long saber. The blood had stopped flowing out of the wound, but it didn't dry up. It was still red. This unimaginable method really opened Momo's eyes. But the unconscious Nero showed a painful expression from time to time, and her body trembled slightly, as if it was her instinct. What happened to her? Momo suddenly asked. From what Nero said, she was obviously an old acquaintance of Miss Yu Yi. Was it a deal? She won't die. The servant girl, who seemed to be in a good mood, smiled faintly. Momo frowned. But she looks painful? Yu Yi said casually, of course. After all, her body is in pain all the time. Without medicine, her spirit can bear it, but her body will instinctively resist. Pain? Momo looked at Yu Yi with surprise. Miss Maid nodded, suddenly chuckling. Mr. Momo, do you want to experience it? Experience? Momo gave a start, then forced a smile. I'm not interested in breaking my arm. Unexpectedly, Mississippi's servant girl pointed at Momo's forehead with her gloved finger. It's not the pain of a broken limb. Although it's similar, it should be like this. Momo collapsed on the ground in a 2 to 3 second span. His body curled up and twitched. His body seemed to be torn apart, torn apart, torn apart. Momo struggled to crawl up from the ground, but his body was drenched in sweat in that 1 or 2 seconds. Yu Yi fed a small capsule into Nero's mouth. After a while, Momo saw Nero's tense face seem to relax a little. And these capsules were brought back by Yu Yi when she left. They originally belonged to Nero. She can only rely on medicine to numb her body? Momo seemed to realize something. Numb her body? Yu Yi shook her head. I'm afraid it can't be numbed. This medicine can only reduce the pain to the limit that she can bear. At least, it won't make her body fall into a coma and cut off all her nerve connections. That meant. Momo looked at Nero's calm face in disbelief. She had been enduring this kind of inhuman pain all the time? Chapter 10:24. In the metal room, everything was cold. Floor, air, body. How many corpses were there? 30? 40? Or more? The room was full of corpses. They were quite young, probably between the ages of 7 to 11. There was only one left. The only one who could still stand was holding a silver fork that was used to eat. Blood was still dripping from the fork. It was a suffocating feeling. All of a sudden, a metal door in the room that couldn't be opened suddenly opened, and a strong light shone in. In front of the strong light, there were several tall figures. The light elongated their shadows, like the tentacles of the devil, and suddenly stretched into the room. Are you the kid who survived in this room? 1 hour and 7 minutes before the oxygen ran out. Not bad. You can enter the next round of the room. The next round will be shorter. Try your best to recover your strength, or you may become a failure just like these losers who fell at your feet. Clang! That was the sound of the silver fork falling to the ground. She suddenly opened her eyes and took a deep breath. She greedily inhaled all the oxygen in the world directly into her body. She was alive. When Nero woke up, the lobby of the club was still quiet. She immediately sat up cross-legged and looked around. Hey, beautiful sister. And the righteous brother. She greeted the servant girl who was reading a book not far away. Of course, Yu also politely nodded in response. Congratulations on waking up, Miss Nero. Yu smiled slightly, got up and walked to Nero. I have helped you connect your arm, and your nerves have also recovered to their original state. There shouldn't be anything missing. Of course, if Miss Nero still feels uncomfortable, I can continue to adjust it. Nero pressed her palm on the original position of the broken shoulder, and then slightly swung her arm twice. She looked quite happy. This technique is much better than the clubhouse, and there is no feeling of awkwardness at all. You really helped me a lot. I thought I would have to eat with one hand in the future. Miss Maid smiled, and then returned the box used to carry the soul to Nero. The cost of retreat and treatment have been deducted. Miss Maid said softly, of course there's more. Do you need me to recommend something of equal value to you? Nero shook the box. It's really expensive. There's only one left. But forget it, there seems to be a lot of places nearby where I can earn money. Then, I hope you can earn more. Miss Maid smiled. Of course. Nero also smiled, then stood up and stretched her neck and limbs. I'm a little hungry. Can I have a meal here? Speaking of which, I really miss your culinary skills. If you don't mind, please wait for a moment. The servant girl nodded. Entertaining guests was one of the duties of a maid. It's okay. I don't have anywhere to go now anyway. I've always been very patient. Nero sat down at once, stretched and said, speaking of which, can I take a shower while I'm at it? If there's one left, it should be okay to borrow the bathroom here, right? You're really a generous guest. Yu said indifferently, but if it's just a shower, it's too much. Well, just take it as a gift for this transaction. Okay. Nero stood up directly. But at this moment. Why, it was Momo's voice. The voice made Nero and Yu look at Momo at the same time. He didn't leave during this time. Why didn't he leave? Was he waiting for Nero to wake up or waiting for something else? Even he himself didn't know. He really couldn't think of the reason why he stayed. It was just that he wasn't expelled by Miss Maid. But why? Mr. Momo, what's the matter? Yu asked softly. Oh, the tea is cold. I'm sorry, I'll change it for you right away. No. Momo moved his eyes away, clenching his fists. Even though he had seen the terrifying power of this beautiful servant girl, even though he was more frightened now, why can we discuss these things so easily? Don't tell me this is really just a currency? Yu stroked her cheek, tilting her head and following Momo's sight, looking at the box on the table. Mr. Momo is talking about the soul. Momo nodded silently. Yu Yi said, but last time, didn't I tell Mr. Momo about the transaction rules here? I know. Momo became a bit excited, but I still can't believe it. Even though I saw it with my own eyes, I still can't believe it. Why would the senior's shop make such things? Why the senior? He is so kind and benevolent while Miss Yu Yi is so noble. Why would he do such a cruel thing? Thank you very much, Mr. Momo. Miss Maid said softly, I'm glad to hear your praise for my master. But what you see is the real appearance of this shop, there's no falsehood. Anyone who comes here can get what they want by paying the corresponding price. We trade all kinds of precious things, and all the time people use souls the most. You? Senior, why do you collect souls? Momo suddenly felt cold. Even though the weather in the shop was different from the outside, the coldness came from the bottom of his heart. It's about the secret of the shop. I'm sorry I can't answer your question. Miss Maid said calmly, of course, if Mr. Momo really wants to know, you can pay the corresponding price. I want to know. I want to know. Here. At this time, Nero opened the box containing the soul very quickly. Miss Nero, you are naughty. Miss Maid smiled at this time. What a scary look. Nero shrunk her neck and closed the box obediently. But at this moment she suddenly heard the bell at the entrance of the lobby. It wasn't that a guest came in, but Momo directly rushed out with his head lowered. Yu Yi looked at it indifferently. Righteous brother, don't you want to have a meal with me to celebrate my escape from death? Hey! Nero shouted a few words, then looked at Yu Yi and shrugged. It seems that he really left. But then again, beautiful sister, isn't she a bit too strict? Because there's no need to deceive. Yu Yi said softly. This gentleman seems to have some misunderstandings, it's better to correct them as soon as possible. I'm going to take a bath. Nero yawned and stood up. Take care. Yu Yi bowed elegantly to Nero. He didn't know why he rushed out like this. Momo lowered his head and rushed forward, only feeling like a deserter. He ran across several streets in a single breath. With the special characteristics of cultivators, this kind of exercise only made his body heat up slightly. The wind that blew in on this cold day turned into a cool breeze because of this. Momo exhaled, white mist exhaled from his mouth and nose. The street wasn't deserted at this moment. This seemed to be the place where Nero fought with the two powerful warriors. Now that the thick fog had dispersed, the street was blocked. There seemed to be cordons in front and behind. At the same time, there were traffic police guarding here. Some reporters were interviewing here but were blocked by the traffic police. At the same time, some nearby residents also walked out of their houses. Momo heard some conversations in the crowd. The public did not know much about the accident. It seemed that a family of 3 had been involved in a car accident, and no one was spared. However, from afar, the car that had been involved in the accident had been covered by a huge black tent by the traffic police. It was impossible to see the damage done to it. At the same time, Momo saw 2 men who gave him a different feeling from ordinary policemen and traffic police. Momo sensed some familiar smell from them. They were also wearing a small badge on their bodies. He remembered that Captain Ling Feng from the administration also had a similar accessory on his body. Are they from the administration involved in this matter? Momo glanced at the crowd for a while before leaving the crowd swiftly. He heard from his master, Changhe Taoist, that the administration not only dealt with the Taoist and monster world but also dealt with the aftermath. For example, they dealt with some crazy monster clan who destroyed the society or arrested some Taoist who had fallen into the devil's path, who killed indiscriminately. I don't know if this matter will be traced back to the senior. Momo thought subconsciously. But soon he patted his cheeks with both hands, mocking himself. Why am I still thinking about him now? Those who fainted in the thick fog had gradually woken up. Momo didn't care about how to deal with this matter. Anyway, with the support of the state administration, there should be a way to deal with this kind of thing, right? Tsingtao beer. He bought it on the way back. Actually, Momo seldom drank. At this moment, he had returned to the empty room of another guesthouse where Jean Eyre was placed. He sat in the corner of the room with several empty cans beside him. Leave tomorrow. I really don't know when you'll wake up. Momo looked at Jean Eyre with heavy eyelids. Sometimes I really envy you, you don't need to worry about anything. He felt sleepy. Suddenly, Momo was awakened from his sleep by some noises. It was the sound of a can hitting against the foot of the bed due to the wind outside. Momo opened his eyes, feeling a bit dazed, but he soon sobered up completely, because he saw a long shadow under the moonlight, which was reflected on the floor of the room. Momo abruptly looked towards the balcony outside the sliding glass door. A figure was standing here under the dim light of the night. It's you. Momo's drunkenness was instantly sobered up. The person who had suddenly appeared here was the mysterious man with the bronze mask whom he had met not long ago in the ancient well of the Song family ancestral mansion. Just like that day, the man was still wearing a simple bronze mask, standing with hands clasped behind his back. Momo immediately grabbed the black wooden sword beside him. He felt ashamed of his vigilance and became nervous. How did the mysterious man find him twice? However, when Momo's palm was about to reach the wooden sword, the mysterious man flicked his finger, and the wooden sword on the wall was bounced away by a gust of wind. Momo was both shocked and angry. However, the mysterious man with the bronze mask had already made another move. A yellow talisman was caught between his fingers, and he threw it out. That yellow talisman turned into a beam of golden light, binding Momo tightly like a rope. Momo directly fell to the ground. Although I don't know what happened to you, you're like a stray dog now. The man with the bronze mask walked slowly into the room, walking towards Jean Eyre who was beside the bed. Stop. What do you want to do? I'm just taking back some necessary things. The man with the bronze mask said indifferently, You think it's his lucky chance to get the imperial edict. But for me, it's the same no matter who gets it, as long as he can take it out smoothly. Who the hell are you? What's your purpose? Momo knelt down on the ground and then stood up. He tried to use all his power to break free from the binding, but he couldn't break free from the golden light. The mysterious man looked at Momo. You're very excellent, you should have more room for development. It's just this world that binds you. Soon you'll see a suitable era for you. What? Momo gave a start. In fact, Momo didn't feel any killing intent from this mysterious man at the bottom of the well or this time. Otherwise, he could have killed him without waiting for him to notice, instead of tying him up like he was doing now. That man doesn't seem to be here. The mysterious man said in a low voice, So this time, no one will stop me. I've dodged a calamity. Momo couldn't break free, but he still dashed towards the mysterious man in the most simple and violent way. You seem to be stimulated by something today? The mysterious man said indifferently, But you'd better not vent your anger on others. The man with the bronze mask hit Momo's chest with his palm, sending him flying and crashing against the wall. Momo spat out a mouthful of blood and fainted after falling to the ground. The things we have prepared are more or less complete. We're just short of